Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Finance Committee of June 15th, 2022 at 6:02 p.m. First item, public appearances, non-agenda items. We have no one in chambers or on Zoom for public appearances. We will move right into, we only have item 2, but then item 3, presentations by department heads. We will turn the floor over to Misty Dodge, our Director of Finance, to speak to outline of document. So, Misty, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. So I shared my screen so that you could see what the CIP looks like. But I take a couple of minutes to just refresh you what the document looks like and how to navigate it, kind of what we're doing tonight, and both for your memory, but then also for anybody that's watching. But I'll keep it pretty quick. So to get to the document, you can get it off of the city's website. Let me go there quick. So you would go under the Government tab, Departments, Finance Department, and then there's a separate section for Capital Improvement Plan, and it's right here at the top. Then the bookmarks are probably the easiest way to navigate the document. So you'll see there's a bunch of summary things at the beginning. Then there's each one of the projects that are proposed have a bookmark, so you can get to each one of them pretty quickly or by department. And then there's some additional items in the appendix. The place to start with this document would be the letter from the mayor. I'm not going to go into what's in here. Aaron will do that next, but this is a great place to start to get kind of an overview about what's included in the priorities of the city. Another place that is often helpful is this projects by funding source, and then the detailed one as well. So you could see, if, for example, if you're really interested in what projects are funded by borrowing, you could go to the borrowing section and see the individual projects that are included in there. Same with capital tax levy or any of the other funding sources. And then each one of those projects that are listed here have a detail page in the bulk of the document. So this is a really helpful way to look at things. We also have reports by department. So if you wanted to see, for example, all of the finance department projects, you'd be able to go to our specific department here and see what's included. Then the summary of changes. So this document, there's 4 of them. Each one of them outlines what has changed between the last CIP that was adopted for 2022 as a part of the budget process until the mayor's proposed 2023-2032 CIP. It lists every single change that was made and kind of groups them into new projects, updated ARPA projects, updated cost, timing changes to try to narrow that down again. So it's just a way to summarize those changes. Again, all the detail is included on the detail pages. There are 4 of these different reports. You can tell which one you're on based on the color at the header. So there's one that's based on total expenditures, regardless of how the project is funded. There's one that focuses really just on the projects that are funded by property taxes, because we know levy limits is going to be a pretty significant concern for us this year. There's one that's for all the projects that are funded by debt, because that's a focus for some people too, as you look at it. And then there's one funded by stormwater rates, because in the past that has been a point of concern as well. So each one of those summaries of changes can be a helpful way to find what it is that you're looking at as you're trying to decide what you think needs to be changed. Another piece that's interesting is this operating budget impacts. What this report is if the CIP is adopted as presented, there's going to be some impacts on the operating budget directly because of those CIP projects. And this report summarizes what those costs are. So if this is adopted as proposed, there'll be about $300,000 of additional operating budget needs that we'll need to be able to account for in our 2023 budget. The order tonight, we're going to go in the same order as the book. So we should be able to just scroll along. I'm going to share my screen the whole time, so you can just make sure we're all on the same page without having to reference numbers. So feel free to just sit back and watch the screen. I wanted to show you an example project. So in Public Works, the 6302 project is a pretty good example. So this is a replacement fund for all of the building systems here at City Hall. So in this type of a project, you can see what the upcoming projects are that we would expect to spend out of this money. Anything that's been authorized or identified as a potential project but hasn't quite been done yet is listed as a separate section. And then if there's any money that's still kind of sitting in that CIP project, that amount is listed in here as well. So you can kind of see how our different replacement funds are funded and if we're on track for the purchases that we're expecting to make. Then in each project, you have that description, you'd have a justification, and then you'd be able to see your expenses and the funding sources. And then there's that operating budget impact at the end of that form. That's how it rolls up to that other report. If the project was revised, I tried to put the revised heading in the name of the project on the detail sheet. That is a very manual process, so I can't promise you it's perfect, but I did do a couple of double checks, so hopefully that will identify all of the ones that were changed. And then as we're going through it, keep in mind there's the front 5 and the back 5. So the first 5 years of the plan, 23 through 2027, we call those the front 5. These are the projects that we're pretty sure are going to happen. There might be some tweaks, but we're pretty confident that this is an important thing for the city. So those are the ones that we really want to focus on, the somewhat vetted projects. The ones in the back 5 from 2028 to 2032, those are really placeholder projects. They're more there for an awareness. You kind of know what's coming up. There will probably be lots of changes between now and the time that they're actually implemented, but it's more there just so it's on the radar of everybody over the next 10 years. And then overall, the goal for tonight is the information gathering stage. So I hope all of the council members that are here, and I appreciate all of those that came to this special finance committee meeting. Thank you for being here. This is your chance to learn about these projects and ask questions and make sure that you have a full understanding of what's being requested and proposed, so that you can make the decision on what you think is the priority for the city based on you and your constituents' perspective. So ask questions. That's the whole point of today. Future stages will be where we talk about what's important and what's not. Right, tonight it's just making sure your questions are answered. That's all I have. So I think it's time to kick it off to the mayor.
Hello, you want to just go ahead?
Yes, Mayor Richardson, go ahead. You have the floor.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for having me. Again, this is technically my budget, but I bring it forward and we have all the department heads come in, tell you about what they're trying to do, and you can make amendments going forward because it really is our budget. And everyone's been through this. That's a nice thing since we have everyone who has been on council for a little while. There is a little bit of knowledge already, so that helps a lot. Lots of different funding sources. ARPA is a new one this year that is also included, including stormwater and borrowing and lots of things like that. We did call out any changes that we made from last year's budget, so you'll see those throughout as well. Did have to make some changes, and frankly, there will have to be more changes and more things cut. And I'll get into that a little bit more. Talking about net new construction, that's obviously a really important thing for us and really determines how we can increase our budget. We did very good last year at 5.4%. That's great and not something you should expect to have every year, but that is fantastic. That does help in a lot of ways. Talk a little bit in here on, traditionally, I think after the first year or two, we've gone down to like 1% growth, and that's not realistic. We're going to have more than 1% growth. And so try to get this a little bit more realistic long term. But that being said, it's kind of scary when you see where we are budget wise, even with being more realistic and showing more growth in future years. Let's see, we did close the one TID this year. We'll close another one next year. Also, obviously, Townhome Madison is coming in. And, one of the things that was really unfortunate this year is that Townhome Madison decided to cut their taxes and use their reserves to pay for operating the town, which means that the city of Fitchburg is out $300,000 per year because they did this. That is $300,000 we will never get back. We're actually trying to convince the Department of Revenue that we should get this. That is borderline criminal that they did this because $300,000 is a lot. that could be 3 people. That's a lot of great projects. And that's something that we were expecting that we don't have. And that has put a serious dent in this budget. And it's really limiting and handcuffing what we can do, unfortunately. Going a little bit further, that we do, like I mentioned, TID foreclosure. That's a strategy that we're using to, keep adding staff. With the town of Madison, we had a lot of staff last year, but there are still a lot of needs throughout the city. And that's one thing. I know many of you, most of you don't spend much time in City Hall. Staff is so busy. They work so hard. They do such a great job. You're going to hear from all of our very fantastic department heads. They have a lot of great people working for them. I can tell you, no one's sitting around looking for something to do, and that's a concern. And as you look to add more projects, there isn't capacity for that, frankly. Just doing the things that we need to do is so challenging right now without more staff. Adding more projects is not going to happen, frankly, and you're probably going to get frustrated because it's not going to happen as fast as you want. There's a lot of things right now that I'm sure you would like to have happen a little faster. I would like to have happen faster, and we just can't right now because there's so many things going on, which is good and bad. We're trying to do lots of great things, and we have a great city that we live in, but we're using that. We are using fund balance again next year. And that's because of the closing of the TID. That's what we did this year. And that makes sense because the TID's closing. We know we're going to get adjustment. However, there is a fund balance structural deficit. And I know you're probably surprised to see this in here because you know how much Misty hates them. I hate them as well. And all of you should hate them. But the reality is, in this current budget, we need to cut projects in future years. Next year is fine for now, but future budgets are a problem. And we talk about this every year. If you add something in, you have to take something out. The reality is that we need to cut stuff out of future years even before we add anything in. And I don't know, Misty can maybe talk to this if we are okay passing this if the future years aren't solved right now, as long as next year is, because this does feed into the operating budget, and that definitely has to balance for next year's budget. But this is just the reality of where we're at right now. And, you see this here, this is just the capital side. The operating side is just a big of a challenge. And we don't go in future years on operating budget, but I can tell you, we have problems in future years because we're not getting additional funding from the state. And you've heard this, you know this, but it's not there. And the reality is that there are future projects that we want to do that can't happen. And you can decide for yourself what those want to be. I didn't go through and cut a whole bunch of stuff right now. As you can see, I've left some stuff in there for now. But the reality is that the school districts in this area have all either done or are doing referendums for operating. Madison just got one passed. Verona, we have heard, is going to do one this fall. And I've heard Oregon is going to do one this fall. There's a reason they're all doing operating budgets. That's not for new buildings. Madison was actually half and half. They did one for buildings and one for operating, but half of it was operating. And the school districts are having the same problem we are. The county, Joe Parisi just mentioned about the county having an issue, and they're looking, I think, at a 5% possibly raise in taxes from the county level. Everyone is feeling this crunch. And the reality is, sometime in the next few years, we as a city might have to consider doing an operating referendum. And that's not just for public safety. That's been talked about in the past. I'm talking about just general operating. And maybe it's a couple things, one for public safety and one for general operating. Maybe it's a couple questions, I don't know. But I want to talk about it and just mention it now. We're going to probably end up talking about it more during operating budget. That is a challenge, and that is a problem, and that's something that you need to be aware of. I've been talking about this for a long time. Some people don't want to hear it, don't believe it. It's a reality, and it's going to continue to be a reality. So sorry, it's kind of a dark cloud over the whole thing, and it's not something that I am in favor of and like, but it's going to be continuing to give us a lot of challenges if we continue wanting to do all the projects that are currently in the budget. So back to my priorities, as always, maintaining existing equipment improvements. That's something where we've got a lot of things, a lot of great things in the city, and they get old and they need to be repaired and updated and fixed. Kids crossing and buildings and park shelters and all these things. We need to keep these things up to date. You know, there's things like the Tower Hill shelter that should have been renovated a while ago. It hasn't. There's reasons for that. The tennis courts at McKee Farms Park, we did finally approve some money to renovate those, but that's something that's been a need for a while. That's just going to get worse and worse. Road construction, we continue to have more and more roads in this city, and we are not putting enough money towards redoing those roads and resurfacing those roads. Replacement funds, such a brilliant strategy, doing that even more so actually, and putting more and more things whenever possible in those. So I'll continue that strategy as well. I did delay a year Hub Phase 2 in the Teen Center. As you know, we just approved Phase 1. There's still a lot of work to do in that. And so naturally that to me makes sense that we're just going to have to push back Phase 2. We lost the staff person that was working on that. We just have to. There's no staff to do this. We're still trying to finish Phase 1, and that's next on the line, but it's just not going to happen, you know, feasibility wise next. But then we also push back the Teen Center. Everything I've heard from people on council is that the Hub Phase 2 is a higher priority, and the Teen Center then should get pushed back a year. We still haven't done the feasibility on the Teen Center anyway, and that's another piece that, you know, needs to happen before we can commit to doing the Teen Center. And, you know, this is, you know, another year, but these things can change. However, again, think about, we have to cut things sometime. I don't know when those are going to be and what those projects are going to be, but think about that. Tennis and pickleball courts, you know, we talked about how many tennis courts in the city need to be renovated and they aren't being renovated. And I really think that we need to focus on the tennis courts at McKee Farms Park as kind of our like main featured tennis courts. And same with pickleball courts. I don't see us building pickleball courts throughout the entire city. I think McGaw Park, that's our pickleball place. But again, we need to make sure that we maintain that as quality. And so both of those I put on a replacement fund schedule because they're expensive to renovate. And the best way of doing that and paying for that is putting on a replacement schedule. And those are two very important ones. So doing that. Yesterday I hinted at this, Southdale Park. We need to make that park nice. It is not nice right now. And so I've put a bunch of funds towards renovating Southdale Park over in the town of Madison. And so I think that's a critically important thing. So doing that. And then, you know, the ARPA TID closure, we've talked about that investment plan. We have these projects in here, but as you know, we approved $7 million worth of projects and we have $5 million. So again, there's things that have to be cut. There's things we can't do. And so they're in there for now, but we do have the highest priority things, at least what I perceived as the highest priority for council members in 2023, and then projects that are lower priority in 24 and 25. And so then, you know, next steps, you've done this. And so, you know, you go through this, look to see what you might be missing, what you want to move up, move back, and frankly, cut. Think about it now, because things are going to have to be cut at some point in time. But how's the project funded? And frankly, something actually we didn't put in here that should be in here is who's going to work on the project? Because I can tell you there isn't a lot of extra capacity. So that's another thing that actually we should maybe add in future years is who's going to work on this project. And you might think you know who, but really that's something you need to be talking about Chad Brecklin about, because you don't dictate, you know, individually staff. We won't get to that level of micromanagement, but you should be talking with Chad. And frankly, for any amendment you want to do, you should talk to Misty, Chad, even myself. I'm happy to always talk through things and explain things and give you information. Obviously, I expect you to do whatever you want anyway, but I can give you some good information and background on some of the thinking on what I did. So, you know, some things there to look at and think about. And ultimately, you know, you can put your amendments in, we'll be doing all those things, and we'll then take action on the CIP on July 26th. So a little long-winded there. I don't know if there's any immediate questions, or if Misty, you want to answer the question. Had to switch computers, so maybe you did mention the future years where we're over budget. If we need to get that under budget, before we pass this or not. I don't know the answer to that for sure.
So the CIP is a plan by its nature. So while there is a really important focus on 2023, because that's the next thing that's coming up, I do think it shows responsible financial planning having at least those first 5 years balanced, which is why we took that unfortunate step of plugging it with fund balance. And I feel very uncomfortable with that idea, but that was really the only option that we had at that point. So I guess the answer to your question is no, we don't have to. This is an optional step. We're not required by anybody to do this CIP, but it does show responsible financial planning.
I don't know if there's any initial questions or not. I know last year I kind of jumped off at this point and people seem to like that. Just you can have your discussion, ask your questions, and kind of leave me out of the fray at this point. But I'm always happy, give me a call, shoot me an email if you want to talk further on anything in particular.
Very good, Mayor. Thank you. Before you drop, though, I will open it up for any questions that the council members may have. Alder Gerhardt, go ahead.
I think this one is a little bit directed towards Misty, but I know we referred out the creation of a new TID district for a forthcoming council meeting. Obviously, part of the strategy is a future closure of TID 4 so that we can get that level of justice. What is the implications of creating a new TID at this time? That just strikes me as, I don't know. I'd like to hear a little bit more about that, about the rationale behind that.
Yeah, so a new TID does serve future financial benefits. So the theory of it is we wouldn't create a new TID and we wouldn't incentivize projects unless that's the only way that they will be built. It's that but-for test that we talk about. So assuming that this TID is needed in order to meet that but-for test and in order for that growth to happen, the growth that is created as a result of there will increase our levy limits a small amount. But then in 20, 27 years, depending on the type of the TID, when the TID closes, we get a levy limit adjustment at that point too. So you're right, the downside of it is that the rest of the city has to absorb the increase in costs that are resulted from the TID projects that are happening. But the counterbalance of that is without the TID, in theory, that development would never happen and there wouldn't be more value in the future to spread those costs across.
Great, thank you.
Yes, Alder Frada, you have the floor.
Yeah, this is for Misty. Misty, have you calculated in this CIP for the next 5 years the impact of the interest rate increases, how they are going to impact our project? Maybe for a 2023 and 2024 budget with the project that they are pending right now?
Are you talking about interest revenue or the interest cost on the debt?
The indirect cost, because most, for everything, for all the projects that we are going to borrow money, have you done that calculation? Is it included in the CIP or?
It's not included in the CIP, but it will be included in the financial management plan that will be presented to you by Ellers at the June committee of the whole meeting.
Very good. Any other questions or questions for Mayor Richardson before he drops off? Offline. Okay, seeing none, we will move on to the, thank you, Mayor. Appreciate your time. We will move on to our next presentation, and that is with Administrator Chad Brecklin.
Actually, I assume we can save this one till last since I'll be here. And if it's all right with you, Misty, we'll move on to Fact TV. And you, Council President Udell.
Yes, I have no objection. And Jeremy. Go ahead, Jeremy. You have the floor.
Hi, guys. We're getting hit pretty heavy with the storms up here, so if I lose you, you know why. So first, I'll just put out that our CIP does come from our fund balance. So for any of the projects that we're discussing, it's our fund balance for the specific funding to our projects. And Misty can always tell you more if you have any questions on that. As far as Project 1710 on facility and equipment upgrades, this year we are going to be fixing our digital signage, upgrading that within City Hall. In 2023, we'll be looking at library AV updates. That's a split cost there, $25,000 from Fact TV, 15 from the library for upgrades. specifically in the large meeting room. So you've got 2 meeting rooms over there. We're talking about the really large one. We do have infrastructure over there. We would want to upgrade that. It hasn't been upgraded since it was first put in when the library opened. So you guys do have some meetings over there. Prior to COVID, we had more meetings and more event stuff that we covered. So we would want to update that. We're actually, as part of this year and the ARPA funds, we are doing projects to upgrade the council chambers and meeting room to a hybrid model. We would probably use that same model in this project for 2023. And then 24, you're looking at the Fitchburg room AV updates. We're sitting that one at 25,000. That's in the community center. It's the old Fact TV office, if you want to know. But that has not had updates. Things have been changing again with COVID. We're doing some more work with the senior center now and streaming more events. So that's why we have that funding in there for that project. So if there's any questions on 1710, let me know.
Yes, we have a question here in chambers. Alder Gerhardt.
Thank you. Hi, Jeremy. Thanks for the presentation. I'm curious about the library AV updates being covered in part by the franchise fees. What's the rationale behind that instead of using the library fund balance to cover those types of improvements?
So we had, at the time that I came in 2010, there was a director that had chose to put infrastructure in there from Fact TV. So we have equipment in there, and similar to what we have at the council chambers, we have remote cameras, we have an office there, and everything is hardwired into that area and then comes back to City Hall. So that infrastructure that is in there allows us to broadcast any events that happen over at the library. Funding wise, we're just taking care of the pieces that are related to our broadcast. The other costs that the library is putting in would be to upgrade the AV equipment in there. So you're talking like the projectors, the sound system. There are things that we want to tie into for the broadcast, but we're specifically to our broadcast, it would be that equipment that's in there. There's a lot more things that could be updated. We're not looking at that. We're looking specifically at cameras, not a switcher, the audio system to tie into what's there. And those make up the most cost on that. There might be some extra cabling or conversion stuff that happens, but the majority is just upgrading that equipment.
Okay, and have you looked at, how frequently do we use that capability in the library room?
So before pre-COVID, I would say we were over there a couple of times a month. Certainly in the other space, so they have a meeting room, or our spaces include the large meeting room, a conference room. Down in the story time room, we have set up there, and then we have set up in the technology center, the computer lab there. So the original thought was that any programming that was happening at the library could be filmed and then rebroadcasted for people to watch. So if you missed an event or you missed something that was going on down there, we would be taping it and rebroadcasting it on Fact TV. As the years went on, some of the vendors and some of the people who came in didn't want to be filmed, and priorities for Fact TV and what we were doing had changed. So I couldn't put a number on it right at this moment, but I would say, a couple of times a year we were over in that space. And then, of course, the library board meeting every month.
Thank you.
Well, I do not see any additional questions, so Jeremy, you may continue.
Fantastic. 1711 video delivery system replacement. We just had a replacement of our head end the last week in May, and it went very smooth. That allowed us to go down to 2 channels and still provide the best coverage that Fitchburg has to offer to our residents with that equipment. As far as the 2023 funding, it's going to be from the property tax levy to Fact TV trend. Oh, sorry, I'm going to skip that one. That one's just a note on there. Replacement of the tightrope system would be, the next replacement would be in 2028. We put 60 in there. That's how much we paid this year. I would expect that to be lower by the time we get to that point. But right now, it's just hard to say. We know what today is, and that's how much it was. And then we do have funding in there for replacement of the way we broadcast to our cable TV. So AT&T Spectrum or Charter, as you know it, and TDS TV. Those are encoders that we use, encoder decoders, to send the signal to those. So we have funding sitting there when they break down. As part of our plan this year to go down to 2 channels, we're actually saving one piece or one router from each one of those systems as a backup for a failure. So it played a role in why we went down to 2 channels. We actually have backup equipment now for any of those that do go away. But that's that pretty much sums up 1711. The biggest cost is the head end system, and that runs our broadcast, offers our video on demand for residents to watch, and our live streaming of the city meetings. So it's the brains of the operation. Any questions on that?
See
Fantastic.
none.
It gets easier from here. 1712 is our Fact TV Fleet Vehicle Replacement Fund. No change in that. That continues to move on as planned. 1714 is the video switcher. This is a new project that we put in. Now, thank you to Misty for helping work and learn a little bit more about video switchers. We basically have been trying to condense down video switchers. They're very expensive, and we had a lot of them as we were doing different tasks, different broadcasts, and we are trying to condense those down to as least amount as possible. But we also don't want to hit you guys with high levels of, when it goes to replace a switcher, they can range from, we pay for one that's a subscription that's $1,000 a year, all the way up to the one that's in the council chambers, and it's by how many inputs we have, can cost over $40,000. So we have ranges in there, and basically we set up a replacement fund to help offset the costs. And if you go to the next page, Misty, that kind of shows the breakdown there, and the numbers, how we, and I would say how Misty came up with how to split this out and make the replacements. So you're looking at the switchers there, the studio, meeting room, library, media van, TriCaster unit that's in our van, and portable Roland. Those are the switchers that we use today. We've been rotating our switchers from old, new to old. So we've actually reused all of our switchers and basically run them out until they're dead, which has worked for us. But we've also condensed the way we do things. So we're playing a fine line there, but we definitely want to be able to replace these switchers in the future. Thus why we put the replacement plan in there to replace those switchers that are labeled on your screen. Technology keeps getting better and better. The cost of these should continue to go down in the future. We are testing a digital switcher. It's just that if a computer dies, then we lose the video switching. So it's nice to have the hardwired stuff because you need it, but we'll see where that technology goes in the future. So any questions on that? That's a new project for this year, but we think it's a better way of planning for the future on replacing said equipment. And just as a reference point, Chad, who's if you're at City Hall and you're looking through the window over there, he's using a switcher that allows us to switch between cameras, put your graphics on the screen, record, and then and that's all being done live. So there's no editing. So the minute we finish this meeting, it moves on to being uploaded right to our server, and that minimizes the amount of staff time that we need to do a project. If we were shooting this with 7 cameras and having to go back and put it all together, you can imagine how many hours it would take. It takes more hours than you guys meet, so it would be not so good. So that's why we use our video switchers. They allow us to do everything live as it happens, and then be able to walk away with minor edits. If that's what we hope for. Questions on that project? Any questions overall for Fact TV? Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you, Jeremy. Very good. We will move on to the next presentation, and that is with Amy Mercer regarding assessing. Amy, you have the floor.
Hi. So assessing, ours is for the assessing fleet vehicles. We currently do not have an assessing fleet vehicle. Our staff uses their own personal vehicles. And so this is to acquire to put placeholders in for a vehicle for our staff. Do you have any questions pertaining this?
I do not see any hands raised. Oh, we have Alder Rada just raised her hand. Go ahead.
Yes, I will recommend that all the vehicle replacement that we pursue from now on could be hybrid or electric cars.
Okay. In this case, this would be or what would you call it? A reused vehicle. We would be obtaining one of the vehicles from the police fleet cars. And that's why the cost is as minimal as it is in here. It wouldn't be a new vehicle. It would be utilizing one of the police cars as they change those out.
Alder Gerhardt, go ahead.
I'll save this question for later. Thanks.
All right, Amy, I don't see any further questions. Thank you very much for your time this evening. Moving on to building inspection with John Crook. John, go ahead.
I can cover this one. I don't think John is here. Right. So this is also similar to assessing with vehicle replacement. Looking at the this one here, it looks like obviously it's set up similarly to the assessing one. And I think the intent is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Misty, that they will also transition to buying used police cars.
Yep, exactly right.
Okay. Anything further? Okay. Additional questions? All right. Seeing none, we'll move on to Tracy Oldenburg, our city clerk. Go ahead, Tracy. Tracy, are you there?
She is not online. Is she in person? Oh, no, she is online.
She is online, but muted, so maybe she may have just stepped away. We can circle back as well. Oh, there she is.
I'm here. Sorry, it's storming really bad here, so my internet's been kind of going in and out. So if you lose me, I apologize. So what we have in the CIP are the electronic poll books, and these will just need to be replaced in the year of 2030. They're working very well now, so we don't have any issues, and that's all I have in the CIP.
I would actually like to add something to this one if I can, simply because it's an example of other things you'll see throughout the document. So not necessarily this particular project, but one of the fund balance strategies that we used throughout the mayor's proposed CIP that is not considered a structural deficit is similar to what we did here. So you'll see the next time we replace the electronic poll books in 2029, we have that funded by fund balance. And then we have the replacement fund set up for any subsequent ones after that. So while the use of fund balance is a one-time strategy, because we have it accounted for and planned for the next one, we don't feel that this is a structural deficit.
Okay. If there's nothing further for Tracy, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
You as well. Next is Mike Zimmerman, Economic Development.
Thank you, Chair Udell. This is our rent-to-own townhome endowment program project. You might remember the council approved the program in 2021 to look at a rent-to-own program that would be targeted towards folks that are at 80 to 120% of Dane County median income. And then you authorized this year for us to continue to work with H&A advisors on the next step in the process, and that's developing some of the documents and looking at a site analysis to eventually do a project with the hope that leads us to this project 6701 that would actually be construction kind of starting in 2023 and finishing in 2024. That would get us 10 units of rent-to-own townhome product here in Fitchburg, targeted towards that income level there. In this CIP request, we worked with Mike and Steve from H&A Advisors. They actually updated the numbers here on the project cost based on the increases that we know to date anyway of construction costs and interest rate increases. So the dollar amount here is higher than what was detailed and projected in the program when you guys authorized it in the beginning. The major source of the funding here would come from the Affordable Housing Fund that was capitalized through the closure of TID number 6. And then there would be some borrowing either through city GO debt or through the Community and Economic Development Authority, the CDA, that also has bonding authority. I think that remains to be determined yet on that one. But you can see the total cost would be about just shy of $4 million, 3,950 there. So any questions?
Yes.
One other thing I guess I would add is I'm working with Misty and hopefully administration and the mayor to possibly come forward with a budget amendment with some existing funds this year in consultation with H&A. As we look to do the site analysis, we're thinking that it might be a better approach to engage with the potential developer, builder, and management companies more on the front end as we're identifying the site. So that way they can kind of respond to RFPs based on helping us identify a site rather than us picking the site and then them making them fit their project to fit our site. We just think that might be a better approach to have them on the front end. So there may be a budget amendment to come and tap into some of the TID 7 affordable housing funds that were still in the bank there to engage some of those services earlier in 2022 as we continue the site analysis. So stay tuned for that.
We do have a question. Alder Rutherford has a question. Go ahead.
Yes,
Okay.
Mike, can you explain why we have this project in the CIP so people can understand? Because we usually we don't have this project in the
Sure.
CIP. Okay.
Sure, because it would be a city/CETA owned project in the end, and then we would have the developer that actually would construct the project, developer builder, and then there would be the management company that would manage it for us. But because it would be a city/CETA owned project, ultimately in the end, that's the reason for including it in the CIP. Do I have that correct, Misty?
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
All right. Do we have additional questions? Yes, Alder Rutherford. Go ahead.
So I want to understand what you mentioned before about that maybe we need to borrow for more additional funding for when we close district number 4.
We could potentially look to that as another source of funding. I guess I would defer to Finance Director Misty on that. I think we've already got priorities identified for TID number 4. So I think right now we were looking at kind of financing the balance of kind of increasing costs of, construction and interest rate with either GO bond debt through the city or through CETA. But I guess we're open to exploring all options that kind of fit within the city's financial management plan.
I guess the thing I would add is that TID 4 closure we expect is going to happen in the next year, but council still has to approve that affordable housing extension, which would fund the money. So we didn't feel comfortable assuming anything either before council actually weighed in on whether or not you wanted to do that affordable housing extension.
Just to follow up on that, so Misty, obviously we haven't made the decision about TID 4 because we can't make that decision in advance, but like it's feasible. We can decide to do that extension for the Affordable Housing Fund. It's not like it's not feasible to do it. So,
in fact, staff would recommend it.
Okay, it just hasn't been decided yet. Therefore, okay, got it. Thank you.
Exactly.
Okay, additional questions? Seeing none. Mike, thank you very much for your time this evening.
Thanks for your consideration. Appreciate it. Have a good night.
You as well.
Alder Udell.
Yes.
You had asked me to keep track of the weather for you. Right now we're under a severe thunderstorm warning. I'm tracking the clouds. Nothing right now. If we were to have to partake in our severe weather procedure, we'd be going to the lowest level. You may just want to discuss how you would suspend the meeting at that point.
I had earlier conversation with Fact TV, and if that is the case, a broadcast would come across that we should move to the lower level. And if we do hear that broadcast, we will recess and move directly to the lower level. Any other suggestions beyond that from your experience?
Nope, I think that would work out well. We're just tracking clouds and activity that's about to hit us.
Okay, very good. All right, so I'm guessing that the emergency broadcast is a definite that would happen if there was a severe weather situation.
It comes over the telephone intercom, and we may or may not hear it in this room. But yeah,
Okay.
as long as I'm here as well and Chief Morales is here, we have notification.
Okay, very good. Just bring it to my attention immediately. Thank you. Moving on. Misty, it's time for finance overview outline. Go ahead.
Thank you. And I would like to stay in the normal, even though I will be here all night, because this project here, Matt Pro might be able to answer some questions if you have them as well. So this is a project that's been in the CIP for a long time. It's to replace or update our financial system, our accounting records. This would include our actual accounting records, as well as all of the checks that we cut, the invoices we take in, utility billing, cash receipting, all of the different functions within the finance department. Our software has been in place for a long time. The specialty of the software we currently have is for much smaller organizations, and there's some efficiencies and additional modules that would really benefit us and make us more efficient. The key ones would be a budgeting software. Right now, we have a very manual Word and Excel based process, which takes far too long, if you ask me. There's some softwares that could help make that much easier for not just me, but the department heads that are submitting their information, as well as you at the council level and the public, that would have a much easier to maneuver document. So budget software is a key one that we would look into. There's transparency software, which is a way to give additional access into our accounting records on the public side, so you can get better information about how the city spends its money, get some better graphs and charts and things like that to be a little bit more of a transparent organization. Fixed assets is also one that we currently hire out to the auditors that we should be able to do in-house if we had the right software available to do it. There's a new lease standard that we have to follow that will be best if we had new software for. And then our accounts receivable module is limited, and we'd like to look at options there. So those are kind of the big heavy hitters, the things that we want to look at when we look at new software. During the ARPA TID closure investment plan, we did talk about additional softwares that could be beneficial to the city, and included in the 2022 budget amendment was $250,000 worth of what we call other complementary softwares. And we put these together because whatever happens with kind of that money will help drive what the best option is for the finance software as well. And I appreciate Matt Pro's help kind of coordinating all of this to make sure that we're working together as well as we can. The big difference in this project from last time is that there has been an industry change in technology now. So we included in the plan $900,000 for finance software, which is based on what Sun Prairie paid many years ago now when this was first put in. There's been a transition, though, to this subscription-based software.
It's just a warning. I'm sorry to have interrupted you. We've had a warning here, so yeah. Well, you may continue now. The warning, it was just a notification that there is a warning, so for severe weather.
Sure. So just want to be clear that we wouldn't do both the $900,000 upfront cost and $200,000 a year. Those would be one or the other. But I wanted to have that flexibility so we could look at the different software that is available and pick the one that best met our needs. And then we would bring forward that proposal to council. They are big dollar amounts, but they would not be both. It'd be one or the other. The other project I have is the Expenditure Restraint Program.
One moment. We do have a couple questions. Alder Radefrada and then Alder Gerhardt. So.
Yes, Misty. Okay. So regarding the $200,000 in the replacement fund, okay. So I want to understand because you just mentioned it could be the $900,000, and then we have in 2023 we are going to be hit with a $200,000 replacement fund. So that one is for what? Is for is other software? I want to understand why we have a $200,000 in 2023.
So it's not a replacement fund. This would be an operating cost. So in the software world, it used to be that everything was a large upfront cost and they paid a relatively minimal maintenance and support cost every year. And the structure in the industry has changed. So it seems to be people are going more to subscription based. I know Microsoft is one that's switched over to that. So instead of having that large upfront cost, you have a higher every year cost in that. So we would either pay the high upfront cost or the high ongoing cost, not both.
Oh, okay, I get it. So this one is a subscription cost, and maybe we are going to decide to go this round or buy the $900,000 off packet. Okay, I want to. So that one is the $200,000 that is coming in page 53 that is going to hit the budget.
If that's the way we go,
Okay.
yes.
I want to know. Okay,
If we do the 900 instead, the 200,000 would fall. It wouldn't go away completely.
Okay.
There'll still be some cost, but it wouldn't be that.
Okay, I have a better idea. Thank you.
Sure.
Alder Gerhart.
I'm curious how much, so you said we have to hire a consultant to do the fixed asset analysis. Do we have any idea of like what the budget impact of that is? Therefore, the savings.
Right. So it's not that large. My bigger concern is that we don't have as strong of asset tracking as what I feel that we should. The auditors kind of take care of it. They have a database that they do it in, and we feed them information. But there's ways and things that we should be doing on our side to keep better track of it, especially if it's federally funded or what the different assets are that are out there. So it's more so about being a better process than it is about the cost savings.
Great. And then I'm also curious about I'm just wanted to mention that I think the transparency is great. I've heard that from some people about wanting to get more insight into our finances. And obviously we have the reports, but being able to actually manipulate.
Hang on for one moment. Is there thoughts on?
I think we're okay at this point.
All right. I think we're going to continue until we hear further development. So, yeah. Is there? Do you want to continue with your question, Alder? Oh.
Yeah, it looks like
we have one. Chief Palvermacher.
I'm not seeing anything that would necessitate us stopping this yet.
Okay, very good. Go ahead with the rest of your question.
Thanks. So Misty, and I think you've told me this before privately, but like, so the people would actually be able to have access to more specific numbers, be able to manipulate them, and that would be available to the public. It wouldn't just be, PDF documents that are released in finance reports. Is that kind of, I just want to get a sense of what that looks like for the public potentially.
Right, so that's my understanding, and that's what we would look for. Obviously, we haven't done a lot of looking at what the different options are, but I know that would be one of the goals, is that it'd be more of a real-time, not scenario-based, but more just real-time, easier to use access rather than the PDF reports.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Misty. We have another question. Alder Rada-Frada. Go ahead.
So, Misty, regarding the fixed asset, does the new accounting system will have a module to track fixed assets in a more, I would say, detailed way? Because I know that the accountant are going to try to sell the business. We can track it for you. You need an audit, blah, blah, blah. I know that. So the question is, because we are investing in this very robust accounting software, I imagine that this accounting software has a module to track fixed asset that we can do it in-house. Yeah, I don't know.
That would be the intention again. So
Okay.
Our current software does have a fixed asset module, but we haven't bought it, and it's not, I guess, as robust as I would like. My hope is that the new software that we purchase would have something that would be more user-friendly and more efficient for us to keep track of those ourselves.
All right. You may continue on, Misty.
Excellent. The next project is the Expenditure Restraint Aid Program. So this is that aid program we talked about in the Committee of the Whole meeting last time, where we get about $650,000 the next couple of years because we restrain our expenses under a very specific calculation through the Department of Revenue. What we use that money for then is to reduce the capital levy that we have to pay for all of the rest of these projects. So this project doesn't have any expenses. It simply shifts between the expenditure restraint and the capital property tax levy. We figure out which specific projects this will be assigned to during the budget process, but this is a placeholder. And then this is where you will see that fund balance use that I do consider to be a structural deficit. So looking at the numbers for 23 and 24 and into 25, we expect to get about $650,000. But once we close TID 4, our aid will actually drop to probably less than 500,000 if I use the numbers as of today and simply show that TID 4 is closed. And so that drop was too high of a hurdle to overcome to get this CIP to balance. So we filled that gap with fund balance. What that means is we are now relying on fund balance in order to meet our capital needs in years 3, 4, and 5, as well as the rest of the plan. So that was a strategy that had to be done, but it's definitely not something that we prefer or think is a good idea for financial responsibility. That is all of my projects.
Okay, additional questions? Hearing none, we will move on. Thank you, Misty. We have the Senior Center, Joe McHorn, but I do also see Parks and Recreation, so maybe it's a little out of. I see Parks and Recreation further down the agenda, so we will move on to Jill. Jill, are you available?
I am, and happy to go before Parks and Rec, so thank you.
I'm sorry. I'll get there just a moment.
No hurry. All right. Okay, so let's see. There's a lot of information in here. I know Jeremy talked a little bit about the Fitchburg room and what he needs to do for Fact TV in terms of switchers and that sort of thing. But as he alluded to, we're doing a lot more Zoom options in that room. We're bringing back a lot more presenters. It's a really nice room to be able to do that in. And so we really would like to do an overhead projector and then a nice big large display and then some speakers to go along with that projector that would then tie into the sound that Jeremy was going to include in there. So I requested the $20,000 for that AV system to partner up with Jeremy's part of that project. And that looks like it's put in for 2023. I don't know if I should mention those tables and chairs. It's in there, but Misty and I will talk about how we're going to replace some of the equipment that we need in the next few years for tables and chairs in those other rooms that we rent too. So the car, just like a lot of other departments, this is just the replacement fund for the car. And then possibly, I think, Misty, there's still another car to be put in there, yeah, for Town of Madison. I'm not sure what year that is, Misty.
So the second car would be 23 and the third car would be in 24.
Yeah.
And then I would mention too that you would also get the used squad cars.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, very good.
Would it be okay if and Misty, you can correct me. I had put in I just wanted to make a comment about the transportation. And I had let Misty know it gets a little dicey when I put stuff in that sometimes goes under different departments. So I know both Andrew and I put in for transportation and that, you know, the shuttle and the purchase of a bus, we've been working pretty closely together. And I see that the mayor had pushed it out to 2024, which, you know, obviously I think you could tell I'm very passionate about transportation, not just for older adults, but for the whole community. And I understand that, you know, the purchase of the bus is a big ticket item, but, you know, the complications of what that looks like and how we provide that service still needs to be fleshed out. I guess I just ask that because this has been pushed out a year, that council continues to make this a priority. I know it's been a lot of information and a lot of work done on the Madison Metro redesign. And I think that, you know, this is just as important to complement that metro system, if not more important, because having our own transit system, inner city, will get people to some of those bus stops that people can't get to. So again, I will still continue to advocate very strongly for for more transportation in Fitchburg that complements the metro transportation, and ask that the council do the same, possibly looking at some grant money to do a transit study in 2023. So I just wanted to comment about that.
Thank you, Jill. Appreciate
Thank
your comments.
Mhm.
Questions for Jill before we let her go here?
Mhm.
Okay, seeing none, thank you very much, Jill. Have a good
right.
evening.
Thank you.
We will move on to next on the agenda, technology. Matt Prowl, go. You have the floor.
All right, thank you. This first project is the telephone system replacement. This is for our telephone system in all of our city buildings. Right now, we're just targeting 2030 for the replacement of that based on equipment lifespan. We don't expect that we'll need to move this up at all. And so Misty, if you could move on to the next one, which is website upgrades. We have a tentative plan in 2026 to replace the website completely. Right now, we're in the middle of a refresh, which is basically an update of the look of the website. We're not changing the back end of the website. We're not changing the content. It's just part of the process we get with our current web host provider. And then Misty mentioned this earlier, but there's a replacement fund then in 2027 and beyond to do this process again, roughly every 5 years. You want me to pause here before I keep going?
Yes, do we have any questions before we move on? Seeing none, go ahead, Matt.
Okay, this is a lot like the telephone system. This is the door access system. This equipment is in all of our city buildings. It's what locks and unlocks our doors, both on schedule and when you swipe your card. It's got an approximately 10-year lifespan on the equipment. And so we're looking at a replacement of the first large phase of this, which would be City Hall, Library, Community Center in 2027. And then again, this is switching over to a replacement fund concept in 2028 and beyond. And
Okay.
then, I'm sorry, was there a question?
Go ahead. No, I see no questions, so go ahead.
Okay. The next project is the video security system upgrade and replace. This is our essentially security cameras located in all of our buildings. Again, this is equipment that we anticipate is going to last somewhere between 7 and 10 years. It's the equipment that we have today. It's the first evolution of that equipment. So we're still watching closely to see how this goes. We're anticipating a 2026 replacement of all the cameras throughout all of our buildings. We actually have the storage for this in the network replacement that we'll talk about in a little bit. And then again, this will switch over to a replacement fund in 27 and beyond.
So all 4 of these were projects that we're going to use fund balance for this next one, but because of that replacement fund Matt mentioned, we don't feel that it's a structural deficit, but we are using fund balance to fill that short-term gap.
Okay. No questions. Moving on.
So this project, it has moved into the IT department this year with the GIS coordinator position. And so this is for GIS equipment and imagery. You can see that the future projects down there are 2023 aerial imagery, 2025 and 26 are additional imagery. These are all done through partnerships with Dane County and others. Also listed in this project are things like our plotter, which is the large format printer that we use to print out all of the really large maps that we display. So this is just equipment that either is on a replacement schedule. The plotter is roughly a 5-year replacement schedule, or it's imagery that is timed along with our partners, and we partner with them to all go together and get the imagery.
Okay, hearing no questions. On to the next item.
Okay, and then this is the Network Equipment Replacement Fund, and this was switched over to a replacement fund several years ago. This project contains all of our infrastructure, like our switches, our storage, our wireless access system. I mentioned that the server for the surveillance cameras is in this project. It's listed towards the bottom. It's called the Video NVR. But this is all of our equipment, our servers, our routers, our firewalls, everything that we have to replace on some sort of replacement schedule over the years. And that will depend on the type of equipment. So our Wi-Fi, for example, is a 5-year replacement. Our switches are a 7-year replacement, but all of that is factored into this. And we have the ongoing replacement plan to fund those replacements of that critical equipment.
Very good. Questions for Matt? Hearing none. Thank you very much, Matt.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate your time. Have a good evening.
You too.
Moving on to the next item on the agenda is the Fitch-Verona EMS with Patrick Anderson.
So good evening, everyone. I'm up there. If we can report, you can see behind me from Verona, the sky's lighting up, and at least the brave birds are coming back for their food. So I think the most you're probably getting hit by the most of the storm right there, and it's going to lighten up for you. So don't have to batten down the hatches quite yet. So I have 2 projects listed here. It's the same 2 that you see from Fitch-Verona every year. They're part of our fleet replacement program that Misty, as everyone else has said, has set up for a great plan of replacing things. So to remind you how we work, we purchase a new ambulance every 2 years. We keep that ambulance for its life for 10 years. It runs 6 years as a frontline ambulance, and then we move it into a backup ambulance for another 4 years. And then again, that gets replaced about every 10 years. One of the things you'll see on here, the first one here with those ambulances, usually as we look at that growth is going to come with more staff over the course of time as we look over 10 years. One of the things I have noticed in here, you'll kind of see a jump in both this one and the next one. So 2021 was our last purchase of an ambulance, which means 2023 will be the purchase of our next ambulance to replace that. Having worked with the company who we purchase our ambulances from, the ambulance that I literally bought 12 months ago, the price of that ambulance has actually gone up 30% in the last 12 months. And that's for an ambulance I probably won't even see for the next 12 to 18 months. So I know everyone who's purchasing, I'm sure Public Works will be talking about it as well. That's just what we're seeing out there as far as that vehicle replacement program. The hope is that someday that is going to level off, but yeah, they are 12 to 18 months already, and probably within the next few months, they'll be shooting out for probably up to about 2 years by the time we order an ambulance. So that's what you're going to see in here. So with that in mind, the original plan we had was we currently have a fleet of 5 ambulances, again, 3 that we use, 1 in Verona and 2 out in Fitchburg. Then we have an extra backup one in 2 stations that we rotate through for maintenance and staffing. So original plan next year in 2023 was still continue to replace one of those. And then as we look at increasing call volumes, where we're going to start needing to add staffing, and that original plan then was 2025, we'll probably be up to a volume where we'll need to add some sort of additional staffing, as it's listed in there, as I shared with you last year. That's probably not a 24-hour truck. That's probably just some sort of peak time truck to help us kind of absorb some of that capacity. So the original plan in 2025 was to keep an ambulance, purchase another one, and increase that fleet to 6 ambulances. What I put in here is actually to make that change starting next year and actually keep that ambulance next year and increase our fleet to 6 ambulances next year based on kind of that timing of even requesting that ambulance to be purchased to purchase in CIP for 2023. Odds are, what I'm hearing from my manufacturers, that we probably wouldn't even see that until 2024. Based on the other part of the selling the ambulance we just did a year ago, the demand for used ambulances, just because the demand is so high. Example I give, up in Lodi, I had an ambulance crash probably about 6 months ago, totaled that ambulance out. They are waiting 2 years to replace that ambulance. So on the plan in here, you'll see that increase this year. Then is to expand that fleet in 2023 or 2024, whenever that ambulance gets delivered. Kind of prepping for that in 2025 and trying to reduce some of those costs that would come from purchasing those farther and farther out. Yeah, with that and the staffing that accompanies that, Alder Gerhardt brought up hybrid. We did actually look at hybrid ambulances. The city of Madison, not even hybrid, but electric ambulances. I know the city of Madison is pursuing looking at electric ambulances. They come with a current price tag of about $500,000. I know I threw that out there for Misty to go ahead and change that in the CIP in 2023. We'll go ahead and start shopping for that. But,
you know, we do have a question from Alder Gerhardt, and I suspect that you may have already answered it, but I'm going to let her jump right in here.
Yeah, shockingly, it's not an electric hybrid question. But thank you for indulging me. I'm curious about the ordering, and this is kind of a general question for ordering of cars now that we're seeing all these wild delays. So when we order a car and they delay it for 2 years, are we paying up front for that vehicle, or is the payment delayed until delivery?
At least for ambulances, I do not pay until the day they drop it off.
Okay. It's just such a strange thing because like we're budgeting something for a year and we might not pay it out for 2 years. And obviously we keep rolling over that money, but it almost seems like for things that we're going to buy in 2024, we like need to order them now. I don't know. It's just an interesting issue that it seems like we're facing that I don't know if any other municipalities are trying to figure out how to fix that issue, or I don't know. I just wanted to throw it out there.
I can let Misty share that. I know I've had that discussion here with the city of Verona as well. I've brought it up to Misty of, like I just mentioned, you know, we're looking at to stay on our normal 2-year replacement plan. That would be purchasing an ambulance for next year in 2023. I have already been told I will not see that ambulance in 2023. So already kind of trying to figure out exactly how we're going to work with that with the CIP process, as well as I mentioned, 2 years from then, that purchase of an ambulance in 2025. By the end of this year, they will already be taking orders for 2025 ambulances before this year is even up. Again, we don't pay for that. As far as EMS works or ambulances work, we get queued up. So we spec it all out and this is what I want. And we enter the queue of building the ambulances themselves is not the huge issue. It's actually getting those chassis from what we use Ford chassis. So that's what the holdup is in our part. So our ambulance provider gets 150 of them for 2024, and that's what they get. So it's not even specific to the ambulance builder that we use. It's every one of them as Ford is distributing them. So trying to really negotiate what that's going to look like. So I have ours in a queue. Again, I have not committed to everything. We don't sign on a dotted line until the day it goes into production, which means it will be mid to the end of next year before we even see that and says, do you want us to build it? Yep, that's what it is. And that's when we sign for it. But again, we don't pay for it until it's delivered. But again, Public Works down here in Verona was looking at the same thing. He said they're still waiting on their 2021 plow.
Yeah.
Misty can probably provide more insight than I can. I'm just down in my lane.
Did you have another question? Go ahead, Misty.
We are seeing that problem too. And I can appreciate that we won't actually pay the cash for it until 2024, for an example. But we shouldn't sign a contract for something that we don't have the money for now. Otherwise, you're binding future councils to have to pay for that in 2024 if you didn't budget for it, say, this year. So we are running into that as well. Good news is most of our equipment we can delay for a year or two and kind of get away with it. And we're all just hoping that this market craziness goes away at some point. But prices are also skyrocketing. So do you really even want to commit to buying something that might be exponentially more expensive than it will be when this kind of settles out? So it's a gamble.
Thank you.
Alder Radefrada, go ahead.
Misty, I have a question regarding the, so this one is going to be a new ambulance that we are planning to buy in 2025. But then I want to know, because I can see in the budget how it's going to hit the budget, but then I don't see that in the in the CIP for 2025, I only see $43,000. How much money do we have in that replacement fund?
So there are two projects here. So right now, this one is just that additional ambulance.
Okay.
So the cost in 2023 really is that lost sale revenue from the one that we would have otherwise sold. But then at some point, because you now have expanded your fleet, you need to set up that replacement fund because you have to replace it at some point as part of that cycle that Patrick was talking about. So yes, the 2023 cost is only this 10 grand, but then it's $40,000+ every year after because of that future replacement of that additional vehicle. And then the operating side, you've got the additional costs of having an additional vehicle, but really the bulk of this one is the staff costs in order to staff that vehicle.
Okay.
Additional questions? Hearing none.
Oh, here it is.
We'll move on to the next item then. Patrick, go ahead.
I kind of hit the two of them together, I guess.
Yeah, I see that now.
Yeah.
Very good. Is there additional questions then for Chief Anderson?
Okay, now I can see the other part here.
Very good, very good.
Yeah,
All right.
they're separate, but I kind of hit them up together because they kind of go together.
I'm gonna ask a question, and we've discussed all of the obstacles that we're up against just based on economy and cost inflation. And is there any discussion of that timeline that you mentioned early on as far as 2 years and using a vehicle for 2 years? What happens if we run into a real issue? I mean, can you move it to a 3-year and extend those timelines? I mean, what prevents us from doing that?
So we're about to find out. Because I am not going to see that ambulance in 2023. I have been told that. So we're moving it to 3 years. That is not intentional. That is just the way of the world. I don't have any other options beyond that. So truly what this will do is switch it out to a 12-year replacement program, but that's still actually replacing an ambulance every 2 years and keeping it for 12 years. Yeah, I'm being kind of forced into the corner. I'm fingers crossed that this is going to work. I have already 3 ambulances over 100,000 miles on them, and I'm not going to see a new one now for at least 2.5 years. So as much as we can continue, we do preventative maintenance on them. We do the maintenance we can. We're gonna try to stretch them out. Again, once we expand to a fleet of 12, even moving that to 3 years now, that's keeping an ambulance for 15 to 18 years, because we have such a large fleet. Moving just one purchase 3 years actually bumps everything out 3 years. That's keeping them for a pretty significant amount of time. The other part of that is because with part of the fleet replacement stuff, we replace essentially everything that goes in it, which is our cots, our monitors, radios, a bunch of other high dollar items that truly only have a lifespan of about 7 to 10 years. So if we start stretching out the life of a vehicle and we make them last, we're probably going to run into some other issues of having to replace cots, which are, again, when I first started this, they were $10,000 a cot. Today is $23,000, and that's probably also going to go up in about another 15 to 20% coming up. So it's entirely possible that over time here, we're going to have to start creating more replacement programs if we don't replace everything with the truck. It's something I look at. There are always options on the table about how we keep this cost down, but we are about to stretch it out to 3 years and see what happens. But like I said, we already have 3. One of those frontline trucks that should be replaced next year is already at 115,000 miles. And we got to put another 1.5 years on them. So once we start getting up that high, it's just more maintenance on them.
Just answered it there. It's the maintenance and then all of the equipment that goes with it. I mean, we hear 2 years, and it just doesn't sound like a very long period of time. But when you're dealing with police vehicles and fire and ambulances, it's the wear and tear, and then the additional cost to maintain it, and then everything that goes with it. That's correct. Is that correct?
Yeah, it sounds weird to say that we get an ambulance every 2 years. I'm like, yeah, I wish everybody was getting an ambulance every 2 years. We buy one every 2 years. We keep it for 12. that's what's the wear and tear on it is 12 years. And that
Sure.
is 6 years of pretty, I hate to say rough use. I would like to think they take care of that stuff, but just due to the nature of what we do, that is 6 years of pretty heavy use. And then another 4 years where it gets a lot lighter use and significantly less miles on it, but we still have to maintain it when that other stuff breaks. And everybody owns a vehicle, or if you don't own a vehicle, just like every truck that's out there, we get catastrophic breaks and replace entire fuel systems and radiator hoses, and facing those parts as well as we segue into the operational budget here in a couple of months or a couple of weeks now. Our repair bill for last year alone, we were about 25% over what that repair bill was. As we're sitting and waiting 6 to 8 weeks just to get radiator hoses and other parts. That's when we put those backup trucks into service that also have 115,000 miles on them. So maintaining a fleet just becomes a challenge. Everybody does it, and we will do it. But that's where we're at, and that's why the goal is to continue to stay with those every 2 years. It's managed to work. We're going to stretch it to 3 and then see what happens.
Okay, very good. Any last minute questions for Chief Anderson? Hearing none. Thank you very much for your time, Chief.
Thank you for your time.
Next item on the agenda is the Fire Department. Chief Joe Palvermacher.
Yeah, thank you. Basically, I'm going to report on 2 different aspects of the Fire Department budget, one of which is more emergency management and one is fire operations. Of all of the items that I'm going to speak with you about tonight, one expense is anticipated to be made next year, and that's the Fitchburg Analog Tactical System, and that serves police, fire, EMS. So I'll start in with the first project number 2601. That's the police dispatch consoles. The consoles that the dispatchers in the police department use are looking to be replaced in 2024. That's the same time that Dane County will be replacing their dispatch consoles at the dispatch center, Dane County Public Safety Communications. So in order to try to stay consistent with those replacements and to stay compatible with DaneCom, we needed to look at that expense. So in 2024, that is a new expense being reported. So I'll just continue on if you guys just stop me as I go, because I've got quite a few to get through. But project number 2602, Fitchburg Analog Tactical System, that's sort of what I explained before. This is a system that we share between the Fitchburg Fire Department, Verona Fire Department, and EPIC. So we have 2 public and 1 private participant in this system. We also utilize this within the county. So Fitch-Rona uses this system, and the police department will use it as an analog backup. So that's why it's in the emergency management budget, because it doesn't necessarily just serve the fire department. One of the things that we were made aware of is the fact that the equipment that exists in the system right now is going to no longer be supported at the end of 2023. They're no longer manufacturing the parts and the equipment for this radio system. And then to add insult to injury, Verona had a leak inside their water tower, which is where they keep some of their repeating equipment, which destroyed their equipment. That needs to be replaced, because we're not going to replace it with something that's going to be out of service next year. So that's one of the reasons why this got expedited. So of the $325,000 that is listed, we're responsible for about $150,000 of that. The rest comes from Verona and from EPIC. In project number 2233, that's the, yeah, go ahead.
So my question is, we are going to have issue also replacing this equipment on delays and all of that?
So one of the good parts of what happened with this project is Misty also put this into a fund replacement program. So every 10 years, we can look at replacing this equipment, and that's typically what we're seeing for the lifespan of things that involve technology, and radios are really no different. The handheld radios that we have are just a handheld computer at this point with the ability to transmit. So it's important for us to stay on top of that. This equipment serves as the transmission of those signals. So I'm not a radio guy. I like to play one on TV, and I like to think that I'm smarter than I actually am. But the fact of the matter is this radio equipment, it's going to have some digital capabilities in the future. It's also going to be able to be compatible with the existing DANECOM. The reason why this is important is DANECOM is one frequency. This analog system is a different frequency. This is our redundancy. So if something happens with the DANECOM system, we still have the ability to communicate. And we do use this frequency frequently as a normal operational frequency. It gives us the tactical capability to speak on scene and not tie up other Dane County channels.
Can I?
Yes,
Yeah,
go,
but my
go ahead.
question was more like if you're going to have any issue replacing buying this next year because of everything is delaying, because of the chain supply and all of that stuff. And
we've been given some reassurance, and I really have no idea what the supply chain is going to do to us until we order, right? But we've been given some reassurance that if the company that is going to be installing this knows that this has been approved for the next year, they're going to start considering how they get that equipment in advance of us ordering it.
Very good. Thank you.
The next project is 2233. The reason this has been revised is because of the fact that we've established a replacement fund for future purchases. Everything else remains the same. This is the project that will be going online in October of this year. The second one will be going online right around January. There's an example of where we approved something. It was at least 6 to 7 months out, and we're still waiting to go online with those. 10 years from now, we're going to be looking at replacement again. Project number 2250, there's no change in that. The important thing to note about this is what we did with our fire engine replacement. We changed last year. Instead of buying 2 engines at a time, we'll be purchasing 1 engine at a time. We used to have 4 engines in our fleet. We reduced that because of the fact that we found that with our aerial vehicle, the one that was purchased about 6 years ago, we can use that as a reserve engine if needed. It has a pump on it, so we reduced the fleet to try to control some of those costs, and that then encouraged us to take a look at replacing 1 at a time versus 2 at a time.
Joe, can I interrupt quick?
Yeah.
You seem to be skipping every other project. So I don't know if you have some on the back of your paperwork you want to talk about.
I thought maybe you were combining.
You trying to get out of here, Joe?
Yeah, absolutely. So
can we go back to 2229 simply because it's revised? Otherwise, I would have just let you skip.
2229?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Let me do 2229.
Excellent, thank you.
2229 is our air light rehab vehicle. The reason this is revised is because of the fact that we're looking at an increased cost, and then a fund balance has been established after that. So this is far enough out that this projection may be exactly that, a projection. We really don't know what that's going to cost until we get closer. We just try to identify what we think is going to be the reality, and that price is going to be higher than we initially anticipated.
So this one you did.
Yeah.
So 2023, yes, 2023 I did already. Would you like me to repeat anything if you liked it the first time?
2239, is that?
2239. This one's been revised because we've upped the price on this one as well, and we delayed it a year. The reason being is because of the price escalation and because of the fact that we think we can get another year out of this vehicle. I'm going to challenge myself here and see if 2250 is what's next on your list. All right.
It is, and this one you did already.
And 2250 I've done.
2254.
2254, this one is revised because of the fact that a fund balance has been established with future purchases. Nothing else has really changed on that one. 2256, extrication tools, once again, revised because a fund balance has been established. Project number 2265, that one was revised with, once again, a fund balance. Those are the portable mobile radios, and that will typically be in conjunction with the purchase that we made this year in conjunction with the police department's equipment as well. 2299, the fire department fleet replacement. No change has been noted to this one. The heads up that I'll give you on this is the, wait, am I at the right one, by the way?
Yes,
all right.
I believe so. Mm-hmm.
2299 is we're looking to have another vehicle purchase next year out of this fleet replacement. I believe it's a pickup / brush truck. I think what we're going to try to do with this, just like everybody else is having issues with the supply chain, we'll address this maybe refer it out in December so that it's one of the first meetings in January, so we can order it right away in January and hopefully get in front of other municipalities. I don't think it's going to speed up that much, but if it gets us in front of a couple of different departments, that can't hurt. So we're looking at about a 12-month lead time right now for staff vehicles.
Very good. Question? Yes, go ahead, Alder Radefrader.
What type of car do you say that it's going to be this?
Pickup truck / brush truck. The brush truck that we have right now has a removable bed in the back that allows us to transfer the pump, the hose, the water tank. There's no reason to believe that is going to be replaced, so we just transfer that from one pickup to the next.
And are you looking for electric pickup?
Well, you're stealing Alder Gerhardt's thunder, but we always, I'll tell you this, we always look at hybrid and electric technology. With the vehicles that we have right now, the ones that have a sustained presence on scene, meaning lights are on and have to idle for long periods of time, it's not the best fit right now. I'm not suggesting that it's not going to be in the future. We're continually looking at hybrid and electric vehicles to fit into our fleet wherever possible. And we're letting the larger municipalities, I mean, Madison's got an electric engine, and they've had some back and forth with the manufacturer because of the fact that it's new technology, and they have enough of a response profile that it makes sense. We are a mid-sized city who doesn't necessarily want to go through the growing pains of new technology, but we'll definitely take advantage of it when it's something that has proven itself.
Can I follow up? No, I want to make a comment. I just came from other part of the world, and I was surprised to see I was paying attention to police and fire and all city utility vehicle, and I was surprised the amount that they are using electric car, and I also saw a fire truck that it was electric. You know what I mean? And I was like, wow, they're like, so that technology is working in other parts of the world, and this is what
Ish. And what we're finding is the type of firefighting that it's involved in. Right now, there are 2 electric fire engines in service in the United States. One is in Madison and one is in Los Angeles. The one in Los Angeles just had a significant water tank leak that is not something that you want to have with battery-operated vehicles. So we are keeping an eye on it. It's technology that will be here in the future, and there will be a time when we'll have them. Right now, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. Much like Chief Henderson talked about the ambulances being about $250,000, we're looking at about $1 million for an electric vehicle as an engine right now. So that's a significant cost and something that we would want to consider. There are some offsets, but not enough to pay for the $1 million price tag.
All right. Any additional questions for Chief Pulvermacher before we move on? Seeing none, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, very good. We will move on to our next item on the agenda. That's with the Police Department. Chief Morales, you have the floor.
Should I say good evening? It depends if the sun's out or not, or good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for being here. And those that are watching, I'll say this tongue in cheek, but I'm glad you guys were by the window. We're over here. There was a blast. I think Chief Pulvermacher and I would be safe. I don't know about you all over there.
We were hoping that you would notify us if that happened.
That window is going to come up in my explanations here in a little bit, so I'm setting you all up.
Okay.
So we'll start off with 2125. This is already in action, the police radio replacement. What I bring up about the radio and technology, and I'm going to sound like a broken record to the prior presentations, and that's going to be for most of the items that are on the list for the police department, is technology is something that wears out. You think of a radio, no different than a cell phone, and how often do you keep your cell phone? Do you replace it? Probably every 2 to 3 years. The shelf life on a radio here is 10 years. And I believe most of the items that I'll be talking about are on a fund replacement program that Misty will explain to you all. But not much extra than the radio. I will tell you some bad news that is going on with the radios. That is something that we're all struggling just because of the cost of the inflation. But not only that, but piecing parts together, certain parts not being available. The radios were set. We did make our order. You can't order the items through Motorola themselves. Baycom is the distributor for Motorola in Dane County. Items were shipped to Baycom, but not all the items are there to put the radio together. So what that means is we're lucky if we get them by the end of the year. We might be talking more about this radio at the end of the year during budget time or into next year. It might not sound like coming back. So this might be something that we're going to be talking about later. I just want to keep you all informed. The one thing that I think is important, and I learning from Misty here, is payments. I don't think in any of the items we should be paying until we get the product. I know that later we'll be talking about vehicles, and I agree we should. If we get a dealer that tells us, hey, you got to make an order now or you're not going to get it by the end of the year, what makes you think you're going to get it by the end of the year? And we should probably stand tall together on all our city items if we're not going to get it. These dealers are just in products alone that nobody can come forward with their promise. We don't know when we're going to get items, and I think this radio is a good example. So to be continued on the radios, they are on order. But right now, we will not make a payment on the radios until we get them. And that's the message we're sending. We'll see where we're at with that. So Misty, also, we'll talk about that a little later as well, or on another day. Any questions regarding the radios? Okay. The next item is 2126, the tasers. This is also something that it has a lifespan of 5 years. The initial purchase is to be made, I think, in 2022. Replacement started for future replacement of the tasers or the electronic weapons. What I can tell you is we have not pushed this through council, but we will be in the near future. I can tell you that the wear on an electronic device like this, even though it's not a radio, you have to test per training standards the weapon every day before you take it out, which even though we don't use our tasers that often as use of force, we don't have a city that uses force with our tasers often. you use them every day to test them, which means you're getting wear and tear on the items, which they break down, and hence you get a shelf life of 5 years. Any other questions on the tasers?
Yes, Alder Rutherford, go ahead.
So if we don't use them so often, what do we need them?
It's a less lethal. It's a less lethal a device that we have, and we have them for our officers as an option of using force. What I will tell you is, any kind of force, when you're using force to take a subject into custody, is not good. It doesn't look good on camera. This is one that will reduce, and it was made to reduce injury on the person that you're taking into custody, and to reduce injury on the officer using the force. It's an electronic. The electronic device is supposed to stun you in a manner where it's going to take you down, not injure you, and allow the police officer to take you into custody with minimal physical force on both parts, which is where we meaning the police and the person that you're taking into custody, get hurt. That's the intent of the device. It does work. We do use it from time to time. Other than that, though, we have to equip our officers with that item. If I were honest, I wish we were back in the day when all you had was a gun, a stick, and handcuffs. But the mandates that go throughout our nation and all the less lethal items that go, your belt becomes heavier, heavier, and heavier. And I always say, we're like Batman. Everybody thinks we're going to have the proper tool for every incident, and that's not the case. So, any other questions? Okay. The next item is going to be item 2140, body cameras. This was, we added 3 more cameras for the addition of 2 new officers hired for the Town of Madison acquisition, and 1 more for an extra spare camera. This is part of the TID closure, and I think this was a big discussion at the end of the year, beginning of the year. I don't think I have to explain much on body cameras. All good? Okay. Next item is 2141. I will be long-winded. You're going to have to cut me off if you want me to, if not. But I'm coming into this after several years of discussing the new station, the new police facility. And I do have a little experience on this as I was trying to establish a regional training center in Milwaukee. And there's a lot that goes into erecting a facility for police. And looking at the numbers, I would say most of the numbers that come up are just based on square footage. Square footage alone to determine the price of a police facility is not one of the only things that we look at. For the money that's allocated, it will be definitely far, far under budget, especially with the inflation that we have this year. And I will be talking a little bit about some background that I have in designing a regional training center. This will be a police facility, but at the same time, you know, square footage is one thing. You have to look at the needs of the station, and by what I mean needs, we're looking at a facility that's going to have to last a minimum of 20 years. So we have to look at the growth of the city. And with the annexation of the Town of Madison and the steady growth of the city of Fitchburg, around 750 new residents a year, we're looking at this year alone being, the end of the year, beginning of the year, being around 34,000 residents. I'm using the number 40,000. Between 5 and 10 years, we should be at that rate, somewhere around or over 40,000 residents. Cities in the state of Wisconsin at 40,000 residents or more are around 74 sworn and a staff of civilian with over 16 on average. And I've been still researching the different cities, so you're looking at staffing alone to house the needs of that. And that's 40,000, which is only going to get you around 10 years, and we want a facility that will last over 20 years. This would be the first police facility in the city of Fitchburg's life. Another thing to think about. and the first time that the City of Fitchburg Police Department will not be in a basement setting. So if we're going to do something, I think it's something that has to be well thought out. So when we look at the needs of the station, we have to look at state standards for a jail setting. We have to have a temporary detention facility when a person's taken into custody. Those are mandates that come from anywhere from stainless steel benches to beds and showers, bathrooms. The beds have to be of a material that are not going to, reduce the ability of bed bugs. That means no wood. And the materials, again, that go into making a jail or building a jail, and the system, the technology that goes into for the jail, from the cameras to the electric doors, the materials, again, the steel doors and all of that will also be a price tag for that piece alone. We're talking about evidence packaging room. Again, stainless steel. You're looking at an area well ventilated for narcotics. I think it's well advertised in radio or talked about on television or social media on the deadly effects from fentanyl, all the other items that all you need to do is touch it with your bare skin and you can be affected by those drugs. There's state standards on what an evidence packaging room should be designed, the ventilation, the materials, the drying room for soiled products. There's a lot of thought that goes into putting that part in the building for packaging. Now you're looking at an evidence room. There's state standards on where the evidence is secured, separate secure system for that, access to that, and again, the camera system that goes into monitoring your evidence storage room. The communication system. If you have a communication center for dispatch, there has to be a certain soundproofing, which if I'm talking here, you shouldn't be able to hear me over there, which means the ceilings have to be designed with a material that is not going to allow sound from moving around, so that you can communicate on various different phone lines or radio lines, whether it's with a citizen or a law enforcement officer, without creating unwanted noise. Going on to the infrastructure, this is going to be a part of talk that I know you're going to ask me if we're thinking about electric vehicles. If you're designing a building, are we going to design a building that's going to allow indoor parking to charge these vehicles if you go that route 20 years in advance? So if we're looking at electric vehicles, there has to be an infrastructure in this building that's going to charge X amount of vehicles. What is the cost of that going to look like? And do we know what the cost of electric is going to be to charge a vehicle? From what I understand, if you have an electric vehicle in Wisconsin that has more cold days than warm days, to sustain those vehicles for the period of time that you're going to have them, they cannot be parked outside in those below zero or those cold days. The charging, the way they charge can affect the vehicle, which means if you're going to use them 24/7, you need to have an area that's an indoor setting where you're going to be able to charge them. So the indoor parking for this area with the electronics, if we're thinking electric vehicles for the future, we have to look at all of that and how we're going to design that and what the cost is going to be to put that in there for the fast charging stations to have those in there versus what you would have in a normal home setting. So things to think about when we're designing this building, and look at the cost of what it's actually what it's going to look like to design a building that will accommodate the needs for 20 years out. I also would like to bring up a piece when we're talking about a police facility is how do you make it where it's self-sustaining? You build a facility, it's going to need maintenance, right? And we're going to be back here saying we need new windows, we need new roof, we need the new items that go through normal wear and tear. You can design a building and make it community-centric, where you can now use it for, if you build certain things within this structure, where you can have maybe training seminars that charge. For example, City of Fitchburg Police Department pays Madison to use their firearms range. All right, and most often the firearms range, because it's one of few in the city of, in Dane County, now you're on the waiting list when you want to use it. If you create another one, now you are within a geographic area where you will get paid to use that facility. Now, when you do that, that money is not going to be made for profit, but it's made to sustain the maintenance of the building. If you think in building that way, those are things that you want to do. A training room to bring in where we can do some of our own training here versus paying another area, another city department or another area within Dane County to go train. Have our area here where the officers can do that. I can tell you surrounding Verona, Monona, Oregon would be areas that would definitely use this facility if we built it. Like the old saying, if you build it, they will come. And you use you use that finances that you get from there to sustain the building. So I have thoughts in doing things or designing these items within the facility so that it can help sustain the facility. But even like I stated with windows alone, the design, when you think of things of blast proof, police stations, look at what's going on throughout our nation today with mass shootings, police stations, serious things happening. Even the design of the windows and where your office space is going to be as it relates to the windows. You want windows, everybody's going to, and we're going to have windows in any facility that you build. But how you design where your desk space is, what type of window is used to where you're going to be at, all change and put another, a lot of thought process in designing something that just looking at square footage alone would not, you can't fathom. It's complicated. It's exciting for me on this piece, but there's a lot to go through. And even though I'll bring up ideas to discuss as a group, I'm more than willing. But there's a lot there. Just the money that's set aside for it is with the inflation, it would be very difficult. So something to look at for the future and moving forward.
We do have a couple questions. I'm not sure whose hand went up first, so Alder Gerhardt.
Chief Morales, so do you have a line item for how much it costs to rent the facilities for, it's a shooting range, is that right?
Well,
or is it something else that, I just wanted to clarify for.
Oh, for items, if we were to put this in the police facility?
Yeah, well, so you're talking about, right now, I didn't realize that, right now you go off-site to do firearm training.
Right. Do you
know how much that costs in an annual budget for our police department?
I can get you that. I don't have it with me today. I was speaking in the general terms, but I can get you the line item for that.
And it would be interesting to also know that the facility that we pay for, if we can get information about what the revenue that they generate from potentially the municipalities that we would attract. I would be interested in seeing that kind of cost benefit.
Yeah, if you could send that on to all of us.
I'm also, as another, I'll let you write a note. Another follow-up is we have this coalition of other municipalities that we share the data, the MPSIS coalition. And I guess my understanding right now is that each individual department has its own evidence facility in their department.
Yes.
Has there ever been discussion about sharing facilities regionally, like having one evidence facility that has all those kind of bells and whistles in terms of ventilation and drying rooms and those types of things that would be expensive to implement in a single unit, but rather than having it just a Fitchburg one, have one that's more regional?
That would be extremely complicated because of chain of custody for court purposes.
Okay. That's
every time that changes someone's hand, that has to be documented as something that can be very complicated and explaining in a court.
So that's why it's never split between. It's always within the municipality because of chain of custody.
Correct.
Okay, great, thanks.
And Alder Rada-Frada, you had a question?
I have a couple of questions. Thank you for being honest and say that you disagree with the budget that is presented to us. We have $25 million to build this police station. you think, you mentioned that it's not gonna be enough. What is the number that you have in mind?
Well, that's the number that we won't know until we have a design made and to come up with that number.
Okay, so the other thing I want to mention is, Dane County is building or is proposing to build a jail. It's going to be very expensive that we are going to pay too because we are in Dane County. So why do we need to have you mentioned that you would like to have in this police station a place where we can hold, delinquents and, why we cannot do that with use the Dane County jail because this is what, they are planning to build a very big, robust, expensive. Yes. So why do we need to have another one in Fitchburg? You know what I mean? This is a question. Why we cannot use, why do we need to have that in our police station?
A jail, there's a difference, and there's detention facilities and temporary holding facilities. What you would call in a municipal building, like let's just use the city of Fitchburg, we do have cells downstairs in our department now. So those are temporary.
Yeah.
Those are temporary for bringing somebody in to hold them because there's further processes when you take someone into custody for interrogation, for further follow-up, OWIs. They're temporary. You're not going to house them for a specific period of time. When a person gets charged with a crime and they are unable to set bail or they can't be released on bail, they are held at the county jail. So even if we brought him here, when we're done with the booking process, done with the investigation, and ready to proceed with charges with the district attorney, they get shipped to the county jail. Yeah. That's more long-term. And there's two separate, no different than prison. They'll remain in the county jail until their case is adjudicated. They determine that they're going to, let's just say you're sentenced to 2 years in prison. Then they would go from Dane County Jail to the designated prison that the judge assigns them to. So they're all different.
So the one that you mentioned, because I am confused, so the one that you want to build in the new police station is going to be a temporary or more permanent?
No, they're all temporary. We would never, City of Fitchburg would never be a long-term holding
I
facility.
want to be sure because, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
But they still have to have they have to be state certified.
No, okay, I agree with that. But I want to be sure that,
Yes.
So my other concern about that is that, I think, personally, I think that $25 million is a very generous budget to build a police station. And we need to consider also the increase of interest rate, inflation costs, construction costs, so maybe, I don't know if we can think about when we design this, if we can build it in phases, like add the stuff, or we need to add all the feature at once, or where we can phase out, because otherwise it's going to be building this police station is already $25 million is more than our annual budget, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, and I am very concerned to see what is the sign that we are sending to our community that say, we are investing too much money in a police station when we have other priority in the city. I think $25 million for a lot of people, another resident here is already a big ticket item, in our budget. So this is the question: is you think that this budget is not going to be enough, and maybe it's going to be $35 million? How we can phase out in the design? Like we can absorb the cost gradually, because this one is going to be a huge impact in our taxes. We build something like that, and it's going to be more than we already. So my concern is with everything that is coming, with the, interest rates are going up, inflation is going up, plus the construction costs are going up, So, how we put everything in the combo, I think we need to be very realistic, and maybe we need to build something that we can afford as a city, you know what I mean? So that's it. This is my comment.
No, and the first thing first is getting the design and see what it's actually going to cost. Exactly. And then from there, look at next steps. And I'm ready to, whenever my opportunity comes, start looking at the next steps. We can go there. and then see what the next, where we go from there.
I think it's like with any project. We start out with a design, and then we move to, there's a lot of discussion, and we move to a plan. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Is there any other additional questions? Yes, Alder Gerhardt.
Yeah, I guess I have some. So I wasn't part of the original discussion when this project was first put in. So I feel like there's some pieces I'm missing, and I actually reached out to your assistant to set up our meeting because we haven't done that yet, and also a tour, so I can get a better sense of this as we move forward in this discussion, which is something that I really need. I'm curious about. So the plan right now is to build. You would completely vacate this current facility and move everyone to that new facility, or would you still use the current police facility in addition to building a new one?
As far as I understand it, that would be our new facility for the City of Fitchburg Police Department, Communication Center, and even, I don't know if that would be a part of it, but if the municipal court would be a part of that or not. Again, I'm just throwing it out there because we don't know until we design something to see where we're going to go with it.
Yeah, and then someone wants to comment on it. I'm also curious, like in that the vacating that police that was intended to open up space in City Hall so we could renovate it for other city facilities. Is that correct?
Yeah, just a bit more background. This has obviously been labeled as a police facility, but it really is City Hall space needs. And the best way that through evaluation, not only of a previous study, but an ad hoc committee that Mayor Arnold had created, I believe, a number of years ago, back in 2013 or 14, was the best way to address overall space needs was to move police out, have them move into a separate facility that would then create enough space to meet City Hall, current and future City Hall space needs for all of its other departments housed here. So that's what would ultimately happen when police move out, is City Hall would be able to expand into that vacated space. And at the time of the study, which again is getting a little bit dated, it was estimated that should provide 20 years worth of space growth within City Hall. Of course, we're almost 10 years into that study at this point. Exactly. So that number of years may have changed by now, but there would at least be available space within City Hall and would prevent the need for any sort of modification to this building, at least an addition or those sorts of things.
Well, just to follow up with your comment, Chad, I mean, we're 22 years into the current facility. So if we're building out for another 20, I mean, I think we've probably have exhausted the facility that we're currently in. So it's just, it was built in 99. Yeah. Or we moved in 99. Sure. So 23 years later. Alder Rutherford, you had a question.
Yeah, so my question for the Chief. Chief, I want to ask you about the evidence storage room. That room, this is a question that it has to be inside the building, or we can rent it out a warehouse where we can put all the evidence, or it had to be, or there is some law or regulation that says it had to be in the same building?
No, we currently use a building that is part of the city that's also in some dire straits of repairs, and they've been part of the budget as well. So we have it, but there's that much evidence. You need one in your local facility. This is the packaging area. When you get the item, you would still need some type of facility to house that temporarily. And then eventually your long-term evidence, this evidence that needs to be there for 7 years or more, that would get placed in the warehouse area, if we want to call that the warehouse. Yes.
Any additional questions before we move on? Go ahead, Alder Gerhardt.
Thanks. I'm also curious, so the plan is the lot that is right on Lacey and McKee, Lacey and Fitzpatrick. That's the site, and that's because the city currently owns that land. I guess I just have this I have this general issue with the fact that we put all of our city facilities in one spot in town, and one spot in town that's not really very accessible to the community. I feel like the community center and the library, they should have been spread out more, because we're such a physically big city. That's why we have 3 fire stations, right? Because we're physically huge. Has there ever been any discussion, and I mean, I guess this is kind of to everybody that's been involved in this project, of moving some of these city facilities, having multiple small facilities rather than building one new giant building right next to the current campus, having a city facility that's across town and it's part city offices and part police offices, and then just like spreading things out versus just building another building right next to the current campus.
Chad?
Sure. This will also capture a question that's been emailed to me as well. And this has been considered in the past, having multiple district stations and or multiple shared facilities. And largely the driving factor as to why we've settled on this as the option to pursue, one is to minimize cost impacts on having multiple facilities. For instance, if we were to put the district stations or shared facilities in the most desirable areas of the city, that's going to likely be northwest, north central, northeast, soon to be the town of Madison areas. Land acquisition costs are going to be significant in order to acquire land, if we even locate land in areas in which we would find them to be most valuable. As we're talking about policing, generally speaking, for the most part, police officers are not in the station when they're on duty. They're out in the community, and therefore having a police station in the community or directly in a neighborhood doesn't necessarily equate to having an officer right there when one will generally respond to you through a phone call. Other costs include cleaning staff and having them to have to move between multiple city facilities, multiple pieces of equipment like copy machines that we would then have to have more leases for copy machines than we already have. Operating supplies and those sorts of things would all have to increase. More buildings and facilities to have to maintain for water leaks and landscaping and all of those sorts of things, and then future replacement of those buildings as well. So we have considered this in the past. I'm not saying it's a horrible idea. I'm just saying that based on all of the contributing factors, in particular operating, maintenance, upkeep, staffing, and cost, that this is how it's settled in. And there could be some benefit. There has been some talk about the benefit of having city services located centrally. So you can make one trip to city center and touch nearly every city department if you need to.
Do we know the value of that parcel of land?
I don't know what the value of it is. It was dedicated to the city as parkland by Promega.
Okay.
So it can only be utilized for civic purposes. And in fact, a court process to vacate the parkland dedication is necessary to use it for other city purposes, which you should expect a forthcoming resolution here in the next couple of months with a request to begin that process.
And there's no other parkland in the city that could be used for an additional city facility? Like a parcel that is in the mix?
Not one that would come to mind that would have this size available to do what you would be looking for and that hasn't already been improved. One of the considerations I'm told for us to be able to use this is that it hasn't been utilized for parkland before. So that's if we have done any sort of improvement to the land that would indicate it was being used for parkland, we wouldn't even have this option available for us to use the land that's been dedicated as parkland.
Okay.
Okay. Moving on to the next item.
I apologize for the long-winded piece. I think Misty said, talk about the police facility. Okay. The next piece is, again, more equipment. That's item 2198. This is just regular equipment replacement that happens through day-to-day. It's a miscellaneous line item for things that may break down during the year. This is some of the things that we have on here. Let me see. Pardon? Yes, the portable cameras, and again, the lifespan of some of these things vary depending on basically things that break down. Any questions on that? Okay. And the last item, we're going to go back to the electric conversation, is the police fleet vehicle revise. And again, this is added the replacement of the 2 additional vehicles added for the town of Madison absorption, and updated the replacement cost of the hybrid recently purchased vehicle. None of our vehicles that we ordered at the beginning of the year have been delivered. And just my personal comment, if we're going to talk about electric, it's, for me, it's either, there's some good electric vehicles out there, but you need to have the structure to keep them, and I brought that up earlier already, indoor, to be able to maintain the charging on those. The hybrids aren't really, we're going to struggle. We're going to struggle with those. We're going to obviously try them, but if you're looking at the weather conditions that you have here in Wisconsin, and to have a hybrid, it's, the ones that actually work better are either going to be, the SUVs that we currently have in operation now, or one of the decent electric vehicles. The hybrids, I think we're going to struggle with, but we're willing to give them a try. So,
could you elaborate on why the hybrids are a struggle? Because it's interesting because me and my husband own an electric vehicle, and we actually, I think they're great. They are a struggle in the winter, especially when you hit those sub-zero temperatures. You lose a lot of your battery capacity. So the hybrid always struck me as a better option. So I'm curious about that.
Because your electric vehicles, I think, are better because of the power that they have. You're responding to emergencies. Their handling ability, the way they handle when you're using them in emergency situations, they're going to handle better than some of the hybrids. And now I haven't followed up. I got to see the hybrid that we're getting. I wasn't a part of selecting this one, so I got to see how this one's going to use. But some of the hybrids that I've been involved with, or the current vehicles, that some of the unmarked vehicles that we use that are more of the economical in nature, when you're using those in the weather conditions, they're not really. They're going to be a little bit of a struggle when you're using them in emergency situations.
So it's kind of like the pickup of the
transition? Handling and pickup.
Okay.
Handling on curves, losing control. On either the electric vehicle or the vehicles that we have currently, the Ford Explorers handle a lot better in a number of weather conditions, whether it's rain or snow. In emergency situations. The other ones tend to fall short on those pieces when you're talking about different weather conditions.
Okay, that's.
But
really
we'll try this one, and I'll report back because that's what I'm looking for in this.
Okay.
When we get that.
And have you had a chance to discuss with Madison or Dane County there? Because I know they have hybrid police, and they're actually, my understanding is they're squad vehicles, not just.
Yeah, I haven't had the chance. I saw the vehicles they had. They had electric vehicles. They had the ones that I saw were the Teslas.
Okay, but those are admin vehicles, right? They're not squad cars.
Yes, they're admin.
Okay,
correct. I didn't know they had hybrids.
I thought that they did. I would love to chat more about this, but we can move on for time's sake.
Very good. Anything else, Chief Morales?
No, sir.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you for your time, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you all.
All right. We will move on to the next item on the agenda, and that's Parks, Recreation, and Forestry. Scott Endel, still with us?
I'm here.
Go ahead.
Certainly, I would be remiss that, it looks like Misty and the mayor did a lot of great work with the park funds here. We've reorganized them the way it looks, and it really seems to make a lot of sense. So I certainly wanted to get a shout out to them, and certainly if Misty is there, I'll try to run through it. But hopefully, if I'm missing something, if you wouldn't mind to interject, that'd be fantastic. So big shout out to Misty and the mayor. The first one is McGaw Park. And if you can notice here that this CIP is going to be disbanded. It's the last 2023 to 2032 CIP update. That projects funded by park improvement fees are going to be moved to a CIP 6266, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. the mayor and Misty did put together an annual a contribution, if you would, to maintain the tennis and pickleball courts, basically at McKee and McGaw. And then we've got some which are moved to a separate CIP 6263. And we do have some miscellaneous updates that are moved to 6259 that we can certainly discuss more specifically when we get to those CIPs. So I think what I'll do is I'll move now right to the 6212 McKee Farms Park. And the big thing here is I can see there, they again identified that projects are being moved to a park funded CIP 6266, tennis court CIP miscellaneous. But I will identify here in 2022, we do have the replacement of the tennis courts at McKee through the TID number 6 closure, which we'll be working on specifically for 2022. And then there's some other projects listed in 2024 and 2026 that are kind of moved to different CIPs to become a little bit, more organized, if you would. Then if we go to the next one is 6244, which is our Moraine Edge Park land acquisition. That is out there a bit in 2029, but for some land acquisition in 2029. So that's in the horizon. 6259, this is the reoccurring park system improvements. These are funded through the tax levy, and just a bit of thought that when a new development comes into the community, we do receive the park improvement fees and the park land through the dedication, and then we build those facilities. But this CIP really updates and renovates those facilities when they become wore out, if you would, in that 20 or 25-year-old lifespan. So these are really as it's titled, reoccurring park system improvements. So these are improvements to original parks that may have been built 20 or 25 years ago that are in need of that update.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
And maybe this is a little bit to Misty. I guess I've never really understood why park improvement fees cannot be used for repairs. And I assume this is state statute, but can someone just give me the 100-foot view of why that's the case?
So park fees were collected from a developer for a specific reason. And there was a developer bill that was passed through the legislature in the last 3 or 4 years that tied the park improvement fees to be more like an impact fee. And the premise of impact fees is that impact fees can't be used for existing problems or existing deficiencies. They can only be used for costs that are needed because of the new development. So the park fees that we collect from the development can only be used for things that are needed because of the development that came forward. Those new residents need a new park, so that's why we can pay for that. But replacing an existing problem isn't really because of that new development. That's because of something that existed already within the city. And so that's a city tax levy responsibility across all of the citizens or the property owners.
So even in the case where a park is adjacent to a new development where the people moving into that development would be using that old park, even in that case, they cannot be used for repairs. It can only be used, really, it can only be used for new parks.
For new amenities, like we've used it for, at McKee and McGaw for the new pickleball courts, the inclusive playground, things like that are new amenities. We've been able to use it at an existing park, but not for maintenance stuff or repairs or replacement.
Okay, thanks.
And I might note in this reoccurring park system in 2023, we've got some Southdale Park items that are identified, a basketball court, and then park identification signs. So we are beginning to start to incorporate Southdale Park into our CIP process.
Scott,
Yes,
will you hold on for 1 minute?
sure.
Chad has a comment, I believe.
Yeah, I was just gonna echo Alder Gerhardt's comments there, and that it's unfortunate that our hands have been tied on how we can use those fees. If nothing else, it would be great if we could use those fees to at least replace the new amenities that had been added as a result of the developments. But we don't even have that option from my understanding of how the statute's currently written, and I think that is one of the challenges that we face. As a community here now moving forward, and you've seen it in some of the things that Mayor Richardson talked about in his opening comments, is we're able to add these amenities and other sorts of programs and initiatives, but the challenge becomes is how do we operate, maintain, and then 20 years or 25 years down the road, replace them or refurbish them, whatever the case may be. So that's one of the really challenging things that we've identified is trying to put together with this particular CIP, and I'm sure future CIPs as well now.
Yes, go ahead, Alder.
So the other comment that I want to make that we discussed this with Scott was that we need to determine if some of these amenities are used in some of these old parks, because we know that we have tennis courts in a lot of park, but people are not using it. So we need to determine and make the call eventually to determine we are going to repair a tennis court that is going to cost $150,000 when no one uses it. So I think we need to ask those difficult questions and make, and determine, what are the future use of park? Are we using the amenity? Do we need to replace all the basketball court when even they don't use it in some parks? So eventually we need to face that reality and, and maybe build or bring new amenity that they are the one that people are using, you know what I mean? And, so.
Well, and certainly to that point, I think the mayor has indicated here that he identified that the tennis courts at McKee are going to be the tennis courts, if you would, for the park system. And then the pickleball courts at McGaw are going to be the pickleball courts for the park system. And to your point, Julia, the other tennis courts that we have within the community, which we have difficulty in funding the repair of them, and we'll get to it a little bit here, but they've identified that if there can be donations or grants or those kinds of things to get those facilities refurbished, and that certainly is an option. But at the end of the day, at some point there does need to be a fiscal responsibility, and I think the mayor in this proposed budget has identified that at the end of the day, the tennis courts at McKee and then the pickleball courts at McGaw are going to be our, those locations for those types of activities.
Very good. Moving on.
Well, and to that point, 6263 is the tennis pickleball court improvements where the mayor has placed, in there an annual allocation so that they can be replaced. And he's identified 2046, the McGaw pickleball courts replacement fund, and 2047, which to be, that 20 years out when we need to replace them, the idea that the dollars will be available to do those replacements. So that's, I think, a great strategy. And then it's identified here, as I mentioned, Chicory Meadow and tennis court replacement grant or donation, funding source change, that kind of thing. So, there is going to have to be a bigger discussion on how do we inform the neighbors, one thing, and then, explain to them and see which way we go. But that's really the direction that the mayor is taking in the CIP proposal. 6264, a large park shelter renovation replacement. We were fortunate here to get some some TID funding, 250, and we're looking to do Tower Hill in 2023. We also did receive some park shelter solar funding. And then there was some existing funding that was in there for the siding for the McKee shelter. Well, this is a really 62, 66. This is our new park developments, and what's good about this is these are all the new developments that are going to be funded through the parkland dedication fees and park improvement fees. So this really does lay out a plan for us, which is really good work and much appreciated. But it does give us the roadmap on what we're looking to do in years to come with the park improvement fees, if you would. So this is a great revision of this CIP. The 6271, the recreation Dunn's Marsh, that has been pushed out from 2025 to 2028, or from 2025 to 2028. Neighborhood Hub Phase 2 has been pushed out, certainly with the timing of Phase 1. We want Phase 1 to be completed and then, take a look at Phase 2. So that's why it was delayed because of Phase 1. And then we got some pictures. And then the Teen Center, that too, I think was delayed. And actually the idea is, okay, Nine Springs Hub Phase 1, Nine Spring Hubs Phase 2, and then the Teen Center as our order of facilities, which I think is another great organizational move. Community Center Travel, our Community Tree Gravel Bed. This is in 2025, and again was the source was the TID, or the TID closure. Which I think this is really going to be another great project, in the idea that we plant something in the spring and are able to harvest it in the fall, and in theory, put it in one of our woodlots to begin to restore some of our woodlots, which is a great idea. Kids Crossing Playground. That's was that moved? Was that always in 2026, Misty?
No, so this was previously in that McKee Farms Park separate one, and we moved it to be here just so that it was cleaner, especially as we're expecting donations. It's much easier to track having it as its own IP.
No, perfect.
And then we did replace the borrowing with the TID closure excess increment, which was identified in that investment plan that council approved.
Wow. That's a good start, that's for sure. I thank you for that. And I think that's it for your local parks department.
Very good, Scott. Thank you.
Hey, Misty.
Pardon?
I asked Misty how I did in explaining her reorganization here.
You got it.
Any questions? Any questions for Scott? Any follow-up?
Yeah.
Yes, Alder Arada.
Yeah, so regarding the Kids Crossing, the playground, I think eventually we need to revise the cost, because this cost has been there for the last, 8 years? We know how much it costs to build a park, and we know how big is this one, so I think we need to be, I don't know, maybe to modify, to revise the cost, to be more, to accurate, okay, so that's it.
Well, in fairness, it is a couple years out, and certainly the 375 is a great start. But yeah, it's crazy that you can't get much done for 750, but I guess that is a reality of it, I guess.
We have a question from Alder Herbst. Go ahead, Dave.
I would just add on that, when we built it originally, we had an army of volunteers. People took off work. I spent a couple days, it was volunteers that built that. And I think we have to go to the same model. Don't just assume we're going to hire someone to build it. Let's ask volunteers. They did it once, create this beautiful thing. I don't see why we couldn't ask again. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Herbst.
Well, and actually the premise prior to this is the idea of trying to create a Friends of the Fitchburg Parks, which I think is really, a thought that we need to think more about. And I know Mr. Breckland has mentioned that to me, and I think it might be a case of we need to maybe begin to start to promote or recruit to see if there is an interest within the community to create a, organization, Friends of the Fitchburg Parks. Because I might be biased, but I think there certainly is support within the community for these kinds of projects, but we really do need a fundraising group or arm to go out and do that fundraising for us.
Very good. Thank you, Scott. And
you're welcome.
Yes, I see no further hands raised, so we will move on with the rest of our agenda. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
You too. Thank you.
Moving on to what's on my agenda is the library. Wendy Rawson.
Yes. Hello.
Hello.
All right. So we'll just jump right in. Our first project, 5202, is a library outreach vehicle. So you may know that we have a van that we use for outreach, and it was purchased in 2017. So this is a 10-year replacement schedule. It is funded through library's fund balance, so not through the tax levy. Next one, 5203, is self-check machines. So we have 5 self-check machines at the library. We do about 80% of our checkout on self-checks. So we use them a lot. I believe our current machines were purchased in 2018. So this is a replacement in 2025. And this is, again, funded out of the library fund balance. This is the one that's coming up next year, 5204, Automated Materials Handling System. So this is a sorter that we have in the back room. It's attached to the drive-through book drop. This checks our materials in and does a sort based on where they're going to be shelved in the building. Without this machine, we would need to add a fair number of staff into the circulation department to hand process everything if we didn't have it. So this we purchased in 2011 when we opened the library. It has done a good job, but it is nearing its end of life. I think we've actually gotten a couple of extra years out of it. So we're looking to replace this next year. We based the $212,000 on a rough estimate from a vendor that we're talking with. We're limited in the vendors that we can use because it has to work with our integrated library system, and it has to be approved by South Central Library System. So this was not the fanciest one and not the most bare bones one. So we're kind of going right in the middle. I think it will do a lot more than the one that we currently have. So we're looking forward to the upgrade. This is also funded out of library fund balance. And then this last one is library building improvement replacements. This is the one project that we have that is really more of a public works and city council project. So this is putting aside money every year for building issues that might come up. So systems that need to be replaced or repaired. We are using some of it this year to design a new chiller because the chiller needs to be replaced. But carpet, elevators, garage door, that kind of thing is what this would be used for. And this is out of the tax levy. And that's it.
Very good. I'll see if we have questions. And Alder Gerhardt has her hand raised. So yeah, go ahead.
Hi, Wendy. Question going back to the library outreach vehicle. Mm-hmm. Obviously, this is not till 2027, and it seems to me that there's probably going to be lots of electric options by then. Is there any reason why this couldn't be an electric vehicle, or why we couldn't maybe clarify in the document?
I think this would be a great candidate for that, because we're not using it 24/7. We park it underground. I think we'd probably add charging facilities in the underground garage. So yeah, absolutely. I hope to do that.
Great, thanks.
Additional questions? Seeing none, Wendy, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
You too.
You are. All right. Next on our agenda is Public Works, and Bill is not with us, Bill Walke, so Chad Brecklin is filling in.
So Bill is joining us, but Bill is still a bit under the weather, and it's put a strain on his vocal cords, and you would have difficulty hearing Bill if he were to try to speak. So Bill and I have done the best that we can here to coordinate a presentation. He's provided some notes on the items here tonight that I'll go through. If there are some questions that can be answered via the chat, he is certainly willing to provide a response via the chat. Otherwise, if it's more involved, what we'll look to do is Bill will jot that question down and then get back to you with a more detailed response. So carrying on with the projects, I'll start with 1699. That is an existing project. No change as a result to this one that's here. We are looking at electric Ford trucks, and in fact, I think you're going to see a request to make the first purchase coming up soon, and those are running at just about $48,000. So, as an FYI. And I'll just kind of keep rolling through these projects, and just feel free to yell at me or
please
throw something at me if you want to ask a question. 1720 Oak Hall AV revised. That's also an existing project since 2016. Needs to update the equipment. Revisions in regards to this year's budget move that project from 2027 to 2028. 2238 early warning sirens, no revisions to this project from the past CIP. 6262 parking lot resurfacing, that's for city-owned parking lots, no revisions from previously approved CIPs. 6302 is a city campus building systems replacement. This is a replacement fund for major building mechanical systems and maintenance and replacement refurbishment for City Hall, Community Center, and Senior Center. As we've talked about through other conversations, the systems and interior finishes in this building are over 20 years old, and many have already seen a need for replacement and have been replaced, and or others are certainly at that spot and or nearing that spot. Major projects have been reviewed and reprioritized with updated prices based on budget, operational, and maintenance demands. And you can see in the description of that particular item what is planned for when in the building. 6304, maintenance facility building systems replacement. This would be to the Public Works maintenance facility on Fish Hatchery Road. Annual replacement fund to establish, again, major building and mechanical systems. No changes have been made to this project. 6307 is a new project. That is City Hall remodeling. This is tied to space needs and also tied to the police facility or police moving out of the City Hall. So this new project would include funding to remodel City Hall to include bathrooms, carpet, furniture, and equipment for each floor. It would likely take a phased approach, beginning likely in 24 or 25, depending upon completion of the police project. We look to start on the first floor that's been vacated, refurbish that floor, and then do other floors in subsequent projects. Go ahead.
That question is for, I don't know, for you, maybe for Misty. Why we are using fund balance for this?
So this is where we had expected to not qualify for the expenditure restraint program this last budget with the 2022 budget because of the town of Madison costs that we knew we were going to have to absorb. But after some productive conversations with the Department of Revenue, they gave us a much higher adjustment than what we had thought was going to be allowed or what would have been allowed without their flexibility. So we had planned to not be able to be eligible for that aid, but we actually will be. So that $650,000 that we had set aside, that we could repurpose for another use.
We mentioned earlier the chillers for the library. Is that under 2022 or is that a 2023? Or I just do not see anything listed under buildings and grounds. Where would that fall?
So that would fall under the libraries section. They have a separate CIP project very similar to this one, but for the library building itself. So that would be a separate project.
And we are intending to fund that replacement with ARPA/TID. That was one of the items prioritized there.
All right. I need to rethink that and have some additional questions, but thank you.
I'm curious about the timing on this because this obviously is contingent upon the police moving into the new facility. Why are we funding this in 2023 when that facility wouldn't be done until 2024, 25 at the earliest?
I can handle that one too. So ultimately, because we had that money that we had set aside that we didn't need for 2023, so we repurposed it in the same year that it was originally planned to be used.
So how does that work? Does it go into a fund that will be used when we get to the point where we're remodeling it? And
Exactly.
Just roll
so
over?
Each one of these sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I'm sorry.
So each one of these CIP projects is set up as a separate section in the accounting record. So yeah, the funding would be there, and then you would see it carried over each year until the money was actually used.
Okay, so there's an opportunity to use it now, so we're using it now, so that and allocating it here because we know we'll need it in the near future. Great.
Exactly. Basically, earmarking it for what the use would be.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yes, Alder Rutherford.
So my question is, so I thought that the council decided how to use those funds. You know what I mean? Like, so because practically we can use this fund to fund other projects, isn't it? I want to understand what is the process to assign those funds to a specific project without coming to council or finance committee.
So it is coming to finance committee and council through the CIP process. So this is where council would either say, yes, we agree that we think this is a project that we should pay for, or council could, yes, choose to put that fund balance somewhere else. The big key though would be to make sure it is for a one-time thing and not an ongoing cost.
Okay, go ahead, Chad.
All right, 2016, the GPS system. The revisions to this project include the replacement term was changed from 5 to 7 years, and the funding was split between the utilities. That funding has been updated. 3101, Public Works Equipment Replacement, reallocated. This is the replacement fund for non-plow trucks and equipment. This project originally included equipment for utilities, parks, and streets departments. The project was revised to split the equipment into those respective divisions and updated the prices to reflect current costs. 3108, fleet maintenance equipment. It's a new project for replacement and addition of equipment for the fleet maintenance division, performing maintenance and repairs to city vehicles within and across departments. This new project to budget for the replacement and addition of equipment associated with vehicle maintenance. A hydraulic lift is being replaced in 2022, and in 2024, new equipment will be necessary to assist with the maintenance of police, transit, other sorts of vehicles. 3109 is a transit shuttle. Project to purchase a transit shuttle for seniors and potentially other residents. The purchase could occur or would occur in 2024 and is funded with state, federal transit aid and or ARPA/FRF. Misty, help me out with FRF.
It's Fiscal Recovery Fund, so it's another name for ARPA.
Thank you. 6198, Parks Equipment Replacement. This is a project reallocated from 3101 for just the Parks Departments. This project reflects updated costs and a replacement schedule for Parks equipment, as you can see there on the screen. 4652, recycling drop-off site improvements. This is a new project. It's funded by the Refuse and Recycling Fund and would be an annual allocation fund associated with improving and maintaining the recycling drop-off site for residents of Fitchburg, including equipment purchase and replacement, fencing, video surveillance, pavement replacement, traffic circulation improvements, and future composting ability. Yeah.
One question in relation to this. Did we, in the last budget, we had a license plate recognition camera. Has that been installed?
Bill, do you mind answering that one via the chat? I think I've seen if I recall, a pre-approval come through this, but I see quite a few of those.
So he says, yes, installed and works great.
Awesome.
We are testing Bill's typing per minute speed there. Thank you, Bill. Appreciate it. 4638, Sign Interceptor Extension. This project is necessary to allow for the development of the Hartung property that has now been proposed for development, as well as development to the southwest of Sign Road. The first phase of the project will extend the sewer from Lacey Road roundabout to the Hartung facilities along the creek there. Moved the first phase of the project from 27 to 23 and updated the costs and funding sources associated with the project. Sure.
Can we add this project to the new TID that we are going to create?
That is the intent, if I recall correctly, Misty, from our conversations, that we would finance some of this through TID 14, correct?
The portion that was eligible, perhaps, I don't know the specifics. Sorry.
I can double check on that. So, and the project plan for TID 14 has been posted publicly, if I recall correctly, based on its referral out last night. So it will be there too. 4702, stormwater pond dredging and retrofits. No revisions have been made to this project. 4705, the Uptown Wet Pond. This project has been updated to reflect current construction costs and is planned for construction in 2023 to allow development within the drainage basin to begin. This area would, or this pond would allow the area north of Uptown to be developed. 4711, Traceway Drive Storm Sewer Reroute. No revisions to this project. Reroutes some of the stormwater drainage into the Nine Springs Golf Course to filter out pollution prior to entering the creek. 4713, Fitzroy Road Stormwater Improvements. Project revisions include the city receiving 80% funding for the design of the infrastructure, which needs to be used in 2022. Construction was delayed 1 year due to the timing of road construction, which will also be partially grant funded as well. And this project will increase the size of the culverts under Fitzroy Road when the road is reconstructed. Sure.
This is the Goose Lake, right?
Correct. Yep, okay. It's adjacent to there. 4714, drainage and flooding improvements. No changes have been made to this project. 4717, Curry Court flooding. The revisions to this project include updated design funding source to reflect congressional district spending appropriation. Assessments are noted, but will be revised depending on the solution selected.
Go ahead.
I thought that the neighbors don't want that project, so we are still...
So, Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, but my recollection is that, Alder, you are correct in that the residents did not want the larger of the options that were presented there, which would do some significant modification to the Curry Court itself. But there was some interest still in doing that smaller project underneath or near Old Indian Trail that would remove some of the accumulating water there. So if my recollection is correct, that's really what this one is looking at potentially doing.
And could you repeat what you said about the fact that the assessment will be updated at a later? Because you said that this is partially assessed. Obviously, there's some grant, right? But right now it's saying that the rates are going to be used, but you will update the assessment at some point? Because this is a 2023 project, so.
Yep. Bill, I'll have to defer to you. Perhaps you can jot that question down and provide a response. I don't know if now is an adequate time for you to prepare that sort of response.
He says that is correct. Also road replacement.
Oh, okay. So how does that update happen? So like, does that have to happen through an amendment forthcoming, or is that just something that we'll adjust when we get to budget?
Now he says no assessments. So maybe I was delayed on my chat sharing.
So no assessments on this one.
But this is something different, I think so.
Because I'd be interested in learning more about that because, you know, we've had so many discussions about assessments, percentage of assessments of stormwater projects, lots of issues with people, you know. And I want to know more about this. We can talk about it later. Thanks.
So another final question. So when we say here grants or donation, do we know for sure that we have those grants? Because for next year, or we are planning to apply for grants?
For the Curry Court one, that has been an appropriation that we were told by Senator Baldwin's office that we will be receiving. So I think there were 5 projects in total that Senator Baldwin's office appropriated funds for us to work on. The Goose Lake, Fitchburg Road was one of them. Curry Court was one. I believe Lake Barney Watershed here, the 4718 that we're going to talk about. Bill has this also noted as one of the projects, and I'll continue to identify the other 2.
Can you send us to the council that information?
Yes.
You know, because
yes, we can
Okay.
certainly. I think
Okay.
it was.
It went out.
It had
It
been
went out
previously shared because this is. I think we received this notification a couple of months ago.
Oh, okay. So we have it in our, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
Okay. 4718 Lake Barney Watershed. Again, that's obviously one of those projects that there was an appropriation made. This project has been revised to update the spending appropriation, which is expected to have that money allocated in 2022, or at least obligated in order to use that appropriation. So we had to move this up.
I'm curious about that too. Like, so we have to have it. We have to spend it within a certain time frame in order for us to have it. Do we have that? We're not allocated the money until we actually use the project, or do we get it in advance of the actual?
So we're still working with Senator Baldwin's terms on exactly how this works, whether this is we're cut the check or we have to apply for reimbursement. So we're still working out those details. We haven't gotten that information yet, but we have had early indications. The information is that it will be best to have the money obligated sooner rather than later so that it doesn't get reallocated somewhere else.
Yeah, because the big unknown with this project, from what I understand, was the wetland. Like, if some of this has become wetland and then we have to do wetland mitigation fees, and that's $500,000, $1 million. That's kind of that unknown.
Yeah, and this money would be used to actually, further evaluate what the appropriate solutions might be for that particular area.
Okay.
So it's not actually to do the project yet. It's really for the design of what the solution would be.
Okay. My follow-up question is because I remember, this is a regional issue, because we had the town of Oregon and the village of Oregon. So this is the allocation of our share of the cost, the 600 or 56,000, or how does the other municipality are participating in this? Because I know that we discussed that way back, but I don't know if we have any update about.
Bill has in the notes here that costs would be split between the city assessments and the Village of Oregon, and then construction would be dependent on the Village of Oregon receiving permits for the construction of a receiving channel within their municipality. So I don't know as though, and Bill, you can confirm this statement, I don't know as though the exact cost breakdown of who's going to be responsible for which portion has been determined yet. Largely because we don't know what the solution is and what the solution will cost. So we're still in the design phase.
But the design phase is going to be paid by Fitchburg or by all of us?
I don't know what the cost is. It's a fair question. We'll certainly be paying attention to that. Obviously, we have a congressional appropriation that will cover 80% of the design.
Okay.
So.
Okay, no, to be sure.
Sure, yep. 4719, this upsizes the storm pipe along Schumann Drive to reflect climate conditions. We also received a congressional spending appropriation for design of this project in 2022-2023. This project was revised to move up this project in order to be able to fully utilize that appropriation. Say that again.
Why isn't that reflected in the funding sources?
So, Miss, you want to cover this one? I know what the explanation is, but you'll explain it way better than I will.
Yep, so this one, there's actually expected to be a 2022 budget amendment in order to do that work in 2022 instead. And then the construction part of it was accelerated as well. So it's not in here because this starts at 2023. And we're hoping to get permission from council to start it in 2022.
You mean it'll start in 2022 with permission?
The funding is going to be borrowing from, it's not going to be appropriation. This is
so the appropriation was just for the initial design piece. So that would be the 2022 cost. Once a specific fix has been identified, there is not an appropriation for that construction cost yet, or expected. So that's why the actual construction would have to be paid for by the utility. And that is too large of a project for the utility to absorb with cash.
4723, Lacey Seminole Regional Stormwater Pond. This project is the drainage basin by Sub-Zero. Closed depression kettle requires a design to reduce the impacts of flooding on adjacent property in the basement. The feasibility study was completed in 2021 and made several recommendations. The city received a congressional appropriation to complete the design of the solution in 2022-23. Construction of the solution is dependent upon future funding. The city has an emergency pumping plan available to temporarily reduce the flooding elevations, but a long-term solution is required. So this project was moved from 2024 to 2022-23 to reflect the appropriation that was made. 4725, flooding north of Dunn's Marsh. This assists with flooding in Crescent Road, Red Arrow Trail area. A feasibility study is currently underway, design to occur in 22-23. This project also received congressional district spending appropriation for design. So this project was accelerated to capture that appropriation. 4726, storm sewer on Floran and Lyman. This project was originally presented. We've met with the neighbors. I know Alders Gerhard and Radafrada have been engaged in this one, and the neighbors were quite consistent in their desire not to move forward with this project. And staff is recommending to keep the project in or near the last year of the CIP as a reminder that it could be needed again if the climate and property owner desires change. And that also would allow for the project history to be readily available for future councils and staff. So that's what we've are requesting to do with this one. 4727, the Nine Springs Creek restoration. The project has no revisions to it from prior CIP. 4730, which is a Seminole Glen stormwater study. A feasibility study is already underway for this particular area. Design and construction of a solution may take place in 2023. No revisions to this project have been made from the past CIP. 4798, stormwater equipment replacement. This is a new project that replaces project 3101 to reflect the replacement fund for only the stormwater utility trucks and equipments. 3198 also is a new project that replaces 3101 and reflects only the trucks and equipment associated with the highway department or division. 3199, replacement fund to reflect snowplow equipment for Fitchburg. This project has been revised to reflect updated costs as well as a replacement schedule for snowplowing equipment. 3319, street surfacing program. This funding is for the annual resurfacing of existing streets. The goal is to maintain at least 4 miles per year, and currently we are being funded, if I'm reading this correctly, at about 2.5 to 3 miles per year. The project revisions include an increased capital tax levy for all years by 2.3% to account for development trends and the town of Madison. Grant funding has also been modified to reflect the additional roads from the town of Madison. 3365, the Herman Road realignment and extension.
Do you know how many miles we are getting on road from the town of Madison? Do you know that approximately?
I know I've seen it somewhere,
Okay,
but I don't know.
Okay.
Bill, I don't know if you have that number off the
I
top
have
of your
that
head.
one.
All right.
In the CIP page, it says 3.18 miles of streets to maintain when the town of Madison is annexed.
Where is here in the, okay.
It's part of the 2023 to 2032 update, the end of the first line.
Oh, yeah, okay, thank you.
Thanks, Misty. And what does it, so we currently have about 136 miles of roads that we are responsible for there?
Yes.
All right. Hey, quick question, Bill, is that 136 miles include both lanes, or in the case of a multi-lane, 4-lane highway, does that include all the lanes, or does that only really include half of the roadway miles? If that question is clear.
He says just center line. So it does not account for the lane miles, just the center line miles.
Okay. 3365, the Herman Road realignment and or extension. That project has been moved from 2028 to 2030 to dedicate resources to higher priority projects. 3367, Sain Road, McCoy Road to the North City limits. This would reconstruct Sain Road between Fitchburg and Madison. Largely, if I recall correctly, that is, yes, Sain Road from McCoy north to the city limits. So that will be a joint project with the city of Madison, and grant funding will be applied for. This project has been moved from 2930 to 2627 to address the poor paving conditions, and updated construction cost estimates have been also provided. 3368 South Sain Road from McCoy to Lacey. This project is a continuation of the South Sain reconstruction project. This will go specifically from East Sherrill to West Clayton. An application for grant funding has been submitted. The revisions to this project include noting increased cost estimates, construction project postponed until 2024 to be concurrent with the construction with the Sain and McCoy intersection safety improvement projects, and the funding sources have been updated to reflect any grants and TID funding.
For this, so the Sain Road project that's currently going on to the Aurora Road, that used to be a CIP project, looks like it fell off. Is that because it's currently under construction? Or
can answer that one. So that's part of this 3368 project. So
Oh,
it's kind of the phase one that it's talked about
Okay.
here. And then I believe there's the construction contract coming forward to council soon.
Got it. Thank you.
Misty, have you considered include this eventually in the TID number 14 part of this cost? Because they're going to be close to the tax incremental district, you know. There is a rule of half a mile that we can, I don't know.
Yeah, so there is the half a mile rule, but the first underlying requirement is that the road cost would have to benefit the properties within the new TID boundaries. So one, the TID hasn't been created yet, so it's hard to say that a road that we're doing now is needed to do the TID that we haven't created yet. But then also only the portion that would be because of that TID would be eligible as a TID cost.
3450 traffic calming program. This project is a new project added to install traffic calming devices or improvements at various locations in the city using the neighborhood traffic management process. Projects would be targeted toward H&I priority neighborhoods. This project would use ARPA funding to begin installing traffic calming measures where indicated through the traffic management process and data collection in H&I neighborhoods in 2024.
Alder Rada, go ahead.
These one are going to be temporary or permanent? Do you know what?
These would be permanent, would
They're
be
gonna
my
be like a
understanding.
bump?
Could be a speed hump
Bump.
or other sort of traffic calming
Okay.
measure that could be justified through data and engineering recommendation.
I just wanted to make a comment because I learned this during the Metro network redesign, is that speed bumps on roads make bus service basically not feasible. So when we are looking at this traffic calming, we really need to be intentional about whether or not we future might have a bus route. Okay, that's on the radar. Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah. I don't want to speak for our snowplow drivers, but I don't think they appreciate the speed bumps either.
I have a question. What's the intent for just the focus on H&I? What about other parts of the city?
I think as we talk through the ARPA and TID conversation, that some of the funding some of the suggestions from the federal government was to use those funds in areas that are most impacted by the situation created through COVID. Now, I'm sure we can, debate for a considerable amount of time traffic calming and those sorts of things. However, we felt that it would be appropriate to look at emphasizing the H&I neighborhoods with this money based upon complaints that we receive and those sorts of things.
Sure, I see the funding source now. Thank you.
Dave has a question.
Yes, Dave. Alder Herbst, go ahead.
I would add, these end up being mostly in District 1, but I don't tend to look at it as, H&I neighborhood. It's high density of kids. Some of these are lower income kids, some are moderate income. There's a large concentration of children which are driving these. The snowplows, I certainly sympathize with them. They have a difficult job. But the buses, I could care less. They've almost run over half the people in my neighborhood flying through. And if they got to slow down for a little bit, I'd rather have a safer neighborhood than, I know they have to meet a schedule, but they go way too fast by my house. And if they have to slow down for buses, the buses have to slow down a little bit, so be it. It's much better than a dead child. That's all. Thank you.
Project 3479, update street lighting. Project will replace existing low efficiency fixtures with LED throughout the community. Grants have been applied for to assist with the purchase and replacement of the fixtures. Funding source was updated to include ARPA and TID money. I believe we just received word last week that we may have been awarded a grant to do some of the replacement. I think you covered that at council last night.
Yes, that was shared at TTC recently, or at RCC, yeah.
3486, sidewalk and path maintenance improvements. This is our sidewalk replacement program. Revisions include updating the funding by 2.3% to reflect infrastructure from the town of Madison. 3492 Fitchburg Road to from Lacey to Nesbit. Reconstruction of the road in 2025 to include curb, path, stormwater, and bike lanes. Grant has been applied for with pending acceptance. And the project revisions include funding updated to include the grant funding, new development contributions, and revised construction estimates.
So this project has been delayed substantially.
So we did get a grant awarded for this, although there were some caveats to it in that we were awarded a grant for, we applied for two separate grants. One was an 80-20 grant that would do a larger project from Lacey Road to Tonto Trail, which is farther south than Lacey Road. I'm sorry, Nesbit to Tonto Trail, which is farther south than the Lacey Road intersection. We were awarded that grant, but the state DOT changed the funding percentage to 50-50, which has created complications for the town of Verona to help contribute to this project. This is a bit of a complicated project because it is a jurisdictional boundary with the town of Verona. So we are looking to still utilize that grant funding, but we are going to have to shorten the length of the project down to Lacey Road in order to capture that. So we're working through some details on that with the state on the grant, and then also with the town of Verona. And I think the grant funding is tied to the design of that, which we can begin sooner rather than later, but the ultimate construction wouldn't take place until 2025.
Okay.
Bill, correct
Bill
me
would
if
like
I'm
that.
wrong on that one, or Misty.
Bill just has a chat that the delay was mainly due to the grant acceptance and timing of funding.
All right, 3495, Lacey Seminole intersection, Lacey East and Seminole North. This project has been updated to only include a west side bike path along Seminole and a bike path on Lacey from Wayfair to Savannah Oaks Middle School. The urban reconstruction of Lacey and Seminole Highway will be postponed until such time as the pavement conditions warrant it. The project revisions include the scope reduced to include only bike paths in 2026, and funding sources were revised to reflect the revised costs. 3497, maintenance of arterials, major maintenance fund preventative for the city's arterial roads. There were no changes to this one. 3501, County Highway M and Kane Road. This project has been removed. It was originally proposed to correct a noticeable crash trend at the intersection. The increase in crashes was attributed to the Verona Road project and utilizing Highway M as a bypass for Verona Road. It's been determined that after the Verona Road has reopened, this project is no longer needed and is being removed from the CIP. 3502 is Rimrock Road resurfacing from Ski Lane to the Beltline, which must also mean Oregon Road to the Beltline. The county is going to resurface the road in 2025. Fitchburg and Madison will pay 50% of their respective frontages. No changes have been proposed to this one. 3503, Highway D or Fish Hatchery Road from Sparklestone Crescent to about 450 feet south of Burnland. This project would upgrade Fish Hatchery Road to 4 lanes and add a traffic signal or roundabout at Nobel Drive. Construction has been moved from 2025 to 2029, and construction costs reflect removing the widening of the roadway. 3504, bus stop improvements. This is a new project. This project would install shelters, benches, and ADA bus accommodations at existing and proposed bus stops. It would use grant funds and/or ARPA funds to implement the project. 3506, Fitrona Road, north of Wayland to south of Wayland. This project would resurface Fitrona Road from approximately 680 feet north of Wayland Road to 1/2 mile south of Wayland Road. This section is identified as a preferred bike route in the adopted bike and ped plan, and the bike committee has requested that bike lanes be included at this time in the section of roadway per the adopted plan. This road is in poor condition and is in need of resurfacing. The project costs in the plan are broken down to resurface the road, maintenance of existing facilities, and construction of new bike lanes. This is a new project, as mentioned. 3507 latitude 43 extension is also new. This would extend latitude 43 in the town of Madison and increase neighborhood connection and mobility. This is a new project that could be considered when and if a TID is available in that area, and has been put in as a placeholder for 2028 for council discussion. 3508 Irish Lane from Fish Hatchery Road to South Saline. This road is being considered for resurfacing. The bike and ped plan identifies this road to include bike lanes. Grant has been applied for to assist with the reconstruction of the road. Resurfacing the road is estimated to cost $1.2 million, and the bike lanes an additional $2.4 million. Design and property acquisition would add another $800,000 to the project. There is a water main project along Irish Road that will concurrently be constructed with the road. Again, this is a new project with a grant having been applied for, and this project would make a significant impact to trees along Irish Road if bike lanes were to be added. 3510, street resurfacing within qualified census tracts. This also is a new project. This would resurface roads within qualified census tracts that are on the city's list of pending projects. ARPA funding would be used to complete these projects, beginning with eligible streets in 2023. 3511 bike lane additions. This is a new project that would add bike lanes to Wayland Road from Fitchrona to Fish Hatchery. This road was identified as for bike lanes in the 2017 bike and ped plan, and this would also use ARPA funding to construct those lanes in 2024. Looks like I'm transitioning to utility now. 4518, well 12 and pump house. This would be a well installed in South Stoner Prairie, updated funding to reflect the increased construction costs. 4519, well 13 and pump house, location off Irish Lane, and is dependent upon development and system demand. No project revisions have been made. 4522, the SCADA upgrade. No revisions have been made to that. 4525, water tower repainting. No revisions. 4598, water, sewer, and equipment replacement. This is similar to the other accounts from being reallocated from 3101. This would have the sewer and water utility equipment costs for equipment in this particular account. Bill, I'm starting to get an appreciation for how many projects you've had to go through over the years here, as I've listened to them a few times over the years. My apologies for a mild tangent there, but 4632, main oversized service installation and hydrant replacement. No revisions to that. 4633, well maintenance, scheduled revision based upon performance is the only revision on that one. 4802, Irish Lane water main improvements. Installation of a 12-inch water main would be constructed at the same time that Irish Road was reconstructed in 2028. This would be tied into a new well when it would come online, which was well 13, and moved the construction from 25 to 26 to align with the road construction. 4803, Tower Hill water main replacements. No revisions to that project. 4804, Belmar water main replacements, revised costs and dates based upon resurfacing projects that will be occurring. 4805, water main replacement. This is a new project. It would be paid for by utility rates, 1.5-inch and 2-inch meters do not currently meet lead and testing requirements. This project will purchase and install new meters to meet lead standards and allow for more efficient testing. And that is the end of them, I see. So, Bill, I want to appreciate or express my appreciation for you putting together those summaries on such short notice today so that we could still work our way through these. I also appreciate all the council members' flexibility and patience as I went through all those, and hopefully we got your questions answered. And if we didn't, by all means, reach out to Bill and I with any questions, and we can certainly look to answer those.
I just have one quick question about the water meter replacement. I thought we had ordered a whole bunch of those and there was a delay. So these are in addition to those ones that are currently in transit or in limbo.
The ones you're thinking about, Gabriella, are the residential meters.
Okay.
The ones we're talking there are the larger meters more for commercial and multifamily buildings.
Got it. Thank you.
All right, very good.
And Chad, Bill says thank you for reading through them.
Happy to help, Bill.
Are you moving into your administrator report then?
I can certainly do that.
Okay, thank you.
So the administrative report, heading back to page 56, it looks like. Project 1038 is a new project, the solar investment. This was discussed during the ARPA and TID conversation, if I recall correctly. And this would allow some funding to be available for adding solar equipment to different facilities within the city, potentially to include lifts, wells, and pumps. Park shelters and those sorts of things.
I have a question about this.
Go ahead.
I saw that so my understanding was that the solar panels at lift station number 1 were actually in the budget for this current year. So is this transitioning that funding to a different source?
I don't. So no, because the lift station would be paid for through the sewer utility, and this is being funded by TID closure. So this would be additional solar panels.
Okay, so those okay, so it's additional to that. Okay, thank you.
Moving on.
Project 1040, Town of Madison. This project obviously covers all of the anticipated expenses related to the Town of Madison attachment that is now 4.5 months away. You can see the list there of the anticipated expenditures between equipment, infrastructure, and other replacement fund costs.
I would note, though, that this one was reallocated. So you notice there were increases in a variety of other projects. This project has been disbanded and added to the projects that are associated with each one of those pieces of equipment.
Thank you, Misty. 1042, hybrid vehicle cost premium. This is the fund that allows us to potentially use any savings on gas costs, if I recall correctly, and potentially reallocate those for hybrid and or EV purchases. Misty, you want to cover what was revised on this one for me, please?
Yep. So in the ARPA TID closure investment plan, council identified they wanted to add more money to this with that funding source. So $30,000 of the TID 6 closure funding was added in 2023, basically to allow larger purchases a little bit quicker.
Thank you, Misty. The Project 1043 general fleet vehicles, again, this is to create additional fleet vehicles available for city hall staff or city staff, and we will be purchasing police vehicles that are coming out of service.
Okay.
And I think that's all of mine.
Yes. Any questions for Chad? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much, Chad. We will move on to action item 4.
Randy?
Yes.
Could I actually do a little bit of a wrap up quick, if that's okay?
Yes, no, go ahead.
Excellent. So two graphs I wanted to point out. One is this is the graph by funding source. So you can see that dark blue amount at the bottom. That is the levy amount and is the one that is probably one of the most concerning pieces of the CIP, something we really need to pay attention to. But then also wanted to point out this graph. What this is it compares the property taxes identified in this plan as compared to what our estimated levy limit increase is going to be going forward. So you can see the net new construction assumptions on here. The different colors are the different adjustments that we're expecting to get, whether it's a TID closure or the net new construction amount. And you can see the first 5 years of the plan all work, but years 6 through 10 are very far off. And it's something that will need to be addressed, but the back 5 are those placeholder projects. So it's not something that we need to address now, but is an important thing for everybody to be aware of as we go into future years. And then I wanted to remind you of next steps from the schedule perspective. So today, obviously, was the information gathering stage. We have some more information piece. We have a public hearing at the next council meeting where the public will be able to come in and share their opinion on the mayor's proposal with all of you. You'll take that information along with your thoughts on it and the presentation tonight to determine what your amendments will be for proposed changes. Those are due July 5th at 4:30 using that form that I had emailed out to all of you. And then those will be posted July 18th. And then the July 26th council meeting will have another public hearing where the public can weigh in on your proposed amendments. We'll go through the amendments and we'll vote on them and we'll adopt a CIP all in the same night. So that will be a bit of a lengthy meeting. You might want to plan to be there a little longer. And then the one thing I missed too is the committee of the whole meeting, the next one on June 22nd. Ellers will be here to talk to us about the financial management plan. They take this document and they put it into their spreadsheets and they will tell us what our tax levy rate assumption will be, our borrowing levels, levy limit concerns, and really look at that forward looking, what this document means to some of our financial policies. So that will be a great discussion too. We won't talk about the specific projects. It's just in generalities, if this is approved, this is what it will mean for those numbers. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you, Misty. Any further additional questions before we move on to the next action item? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to item 4, action items. Now, this resolution, correct me if I'm wrong, Misty, it's just the Finance Committee that's voting?
It is, and I will also clarify that, yes, we have this amendment process to go through, which is kind of assumed. So I would hope Finance Committee will approve or recommend this resolution for approval with the understanding that it's subject to all of those amendments that still need to be submitted and voted upon.
Very good. Do I have a motion to approve Resolution R-135-22, adopting the 2023 through 2032 Capital Improvement Plan, known as CIP?
I move approval.
Motion made by Alder Gerhardt. Discussion? Seeing none, I'll place the motion to a vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it. Motion carries. Next item is announcements. There are no announcements. Moving on. Do I have a motion? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right. Motion made to adjourn. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 We are adjourned at 9:29 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks.